Welcome into the Sean O'Connell Show. Should we do the OC thing? Happy Friday! Jersey Friday, as you can see on the YouTube channel at ESPN 700 Sports Utah. You can also see my co-host today, Bryan Brown. Brown Bear. How's it going, man? This is going to be fun.
Like Isaac Austin, I'm just happy to be here today. I think I use that line every single time I come in and do radio with you.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's just one of those burned-in memories from childhood where he stood up in a press conference and just said, I'm just happy to be here.
Just happy to be here.
I'm just happy to be here.
I'm also here so I don't get fined.
Yes, one of those things.
Marshawn Lynch, too.
Yeah.
So, two of the great one-liners in sports press conferences.
Neck and neck.
We've got an outstanding guest list lined up for you today. Normally we have the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. He's on assignment. He's on assignment today, so not able to get with him. But you saw me tweet out. We've got. Should we say that? Can we say this about him? Runnin' Utes legend, Parker Van Dyke. Certainly, Runnin' Utes great, Parker Van Dyke.
I texted my Utes group chat that I was interviewing the legend tomorrow, and any questions that they wanted to ask to forward them to me. So
they went with it.
And he's hit one of the most memorable shots in recent memory for Utah history. Right?
I did tweet that out. Utah fans, check that tweet out at ESPN 700 is probably the easiest way to find that. I want to know. It's obviously not a moment with the amount of success the Runnin' Utes have had all time. It's not a moment that's going to outrank NCAA tournament moments that we've seen. But in recent Runnin' Utes history, where do you think that ranks? I don't know that there's a bigger moment than that, especially because they haven't been to the NCAA tournament in forever.
That's what I was going to say, is there haven't been a lot of real bright spots up there lately. And part of it is just, it was such an incredible shot. It was a game winner. It was at Pauley Pavilion, a very historic place. It was at a point in time where Utah was really struggling to have anything good going in the Pac-12. But also, it's just, like you said, it's one of the more memorable moments in the last decade for Utah. And when I look back at 30-plus years of being a Utah basketball fan, it's one moment that didn't make me cry, unlike the 1998 national championship game. So
cry in a bad way.
Yeah,
right?
like ugly cry.
You have tears of joy. Plenty of that in Utah basketball history, and as far as the really successful part of it, this might have been a tears of joy moment for a lot of Utah fans. It was not only like buzzer beater from nearly half court at Pauley Pavilion, like you said, but down 23 in the second half, and the comeback capped off by that. Also, one of Bill Riley's best calls, football, basketball, whatever.
He's had a great career afterwards, too, and I'm excited to talk to Parker about that and his experiences having gone overseas and then gone on to play for the Austin Spurs last year, and just how this, his entire stretch as a Ute, he was kind of the last bastion of guys who stay for 4 years. And to start and finish his career as a University of Utah Runnin' Ute, I think that's a really unique aspect of his story as well. So people can bicker with us about the legend status. On today's show, he's a legend.
He's a legend. PVD at 11:30. You mentioned his pro career so far. Obviously, no NBA time yet, but doesn't mean it's not an impressive career. I mean, he hasn't had to not play a year since he left college. Like he's always been on a team. He was in Mexico, he was in Estonia, he was in Germany for a couple of years, he was in Spain, and then it's seemingly, I don't know, no disrespect to those other leagues, seemingly he's worked his way up to the G League, one step away from the NBA, which I'm not going to rule out. Maybe he makes TJ McConnell highlights on the on the TV right now. He could be a three-point shooting TJ McConnell, unassuming role player who does something good for an NBA team. I'm not going to rule that out at some point in his career, because he's consistently moved up the ladder in his pro career so far, to the point where he's one league away from the NBA in the G League playing, and I'm sure he's thrilled to be playing in the United States.
It's a sense of accomplishment for a guy that I don't know very many people expected this from him. If you looked at that team, he's likely not the guy that you expected at this point in time to still be playing professional
yes,
basketball.
certainly not the go-to scorer. Certainly a key player, key leader for those teams. But you looked at those kind of players we tend to see as like, okay, he's going to have a college career, and then maybe not much of a pro career. He's proved everyone wrong with that. Anyone who thought that way wrong, myself included. So I'm excited to talk to him about his pro career so far. We'll of course talk to him about his memories of that shot that we talked about against UCLA. Get his reaction to Alex Jensen, the great alumni hire that Utah has made. The roster is complete as well, and then some NBA Finals thoughts with him, as it is a Game 7 happening on Sunday for that series. We'll also talk with Tony Jones. We love Tony Jones, of course. More NBA Finals talk with him, Jazz draft talk. Get his thoughts. He's been covering the Sixers this year too, so he's probably got some good insights on Ace Bailey, the Ace Bailey situation where he inexplicably canceled a workout probably the consensus third best player in this draft, canceling the workout with the team that has the number 3 pick. It feels weird. So he probably got some good insights on that. That's Tony Jones at 12. And then the great OC, the host of this show, Scott Mitchell, who typically fills in for him. You've probably heard Bryan. He likes to say, "Hi, OC. Welcome to your show." When we have him on, so we'll welcome OC to his show. He's calling PFL fights in Wichita, semifinal fights. If you're familiar with PFL, if you're not familiar with PFL, they have like their regular season is like a tournament style thing all the way to a championship. They're in the semifinal rounds at this point. In Wichita, we'll give him a chance to talk about that, and also we'll air some grievances like we do every Friday. You got some grievances ready?
I got some grievances with this weather right now.
Okay. We'll save it for 1:30. All right. We'll air some grievances. We want to hear your grievances as well. 877-353-0700. Start sending those in. Give us a call around 1:30 today. Same number to call us. And I definitely have some grievances as well. OC's been doing start bench cut too, so I'm going to ask him, hey, do you want to do a start bench cut with us here? And we'll see what today's will be. That and more coming up on the show. Wanted to start out, we'll keep the Utah, we'll get to the NBA Finals, Game 7. So excited for that, as you all can see watching on YouTube. Got the Pacers jersey on today. Not a Pacers fan, Reggie Miller. Loved Reggie Miller, but I am kind of pulling for this Pacers team too this year, just totally separate from that.
Speaking of the group chat, that is one that's been percolating a little bit on mine. Is this Pacers team is extremely likable.
They are, aren't they?
And it tugged at my heartstrings a little bit the other day because Bryan Carlson, father of Brandon Carlson, was at the game cheering for the Thunder. I'm one of those people that always wants to cheer for fellow former Utes as much as possible. And so
that's a good point. We forget. I have forgotten about that, even though I knew he was still on the Thunder because he doesn't play all that much.
Yeah, and Dylan Jones, former Weber State Wildcat,
great. He got some time yesterday in garbage time. Got forced a ejection on James Johnson.
Who'd have thought?
I mean, that's pretty
Never
good work.
Never would expect
by
it
him.
Coming from James Johnson.
Is that in the stat sheet? Forced ejection for opponent play.
That should be a stat. I think like the stats that we don't necessarily keep, but probably should.
Yeah,
file that one under.
Whoever's guarding Draymond Green on a given night is the all-time leader with that, probably. Except that the refs give him all kind of leeway, so maybe not. I digress. So we'll get into our thoughts on that, more of our thoughts on that. But I wanted to start out with some Utah football conversation. 71 days till kickoff, Bryan. And I know no one, there's few better to have these kind of conversations with than the great Bryan Brown. So I'm excited that you're on the show today to talk about this stuff. So 71 days till kickoff at UCLA, August 30th. It's on Fox, 9:00 start. We all know that. If you want to see down to the second, head to the website, ESPN700sports.com. If you just want to keep up with the days, that's why we got the countdown clock on the station for you. We're in summertime radio, so that means when it comes to Utah football, we're scrambling to come up with ways to talk about this team that don't sound tired, and it kind of sound pretty original, and get you guys thinking about how you feel about this upcoming season. So, Bryan, with that in mind, I thought we'd do a little most trusted, least trusted part of Utah football this season. We're doing position groups, and then I added coaching staff as a category as well. So with that in mind, Bryan, let's start with your most trusted part of the Utah football team.
So this is if we were taking all of OC's money and investing it
yes.
accordingly, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if that's the case, very off-brand for me here, but my most trusted group on this team right now, including the coaching staff, is the offensive line.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
See, I would think that the coaching. I almost didn't put coaching in there because it would seem like a default. 20 years with basically the same staff. Obviously, different guys shuffling in and out, but 20 years with Witt. Morgan's been there a while now as defensive coordinator. A bunch of other guys, former Utes, have been on the staff for a long time. So you trust the O-line more than you trust Witt and company.
I think it is a new era in college football. I think we're all very aware of that. I could probably go for an hour airing my grievances about the things that I don't like about this era. That being said,
you're hosting next Friday too, so maybe you can save that.
We'll space it out. Yeah, we'll buckle up, folks. Pencil that one in on the calendars. I got a lot of things for you people to hear about.
Brown Bears, state of college football grievance.
My address, my State of the Union, college football. More bands. That's the number one thing that we need. But I do think when you look at this Utah football team, where the program is at, there is so much change that has really fought against what this program was built on, right? This is a program that's been built on developing players fundamentally, finding guys that are kind of diamonds in the rough and fitting them into a certain program, allowing them to develop over 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years. You look at a player like Terrell Burgess, who is still in the NFL, played only one season at the University of Utah, and really that's what they wanted to put him on the poster. That is exactly what they love and exactly what they wanted to promote. Like, hey, you're a 3-star athlete, you're playing at this position, come here, do this for us. Right, Junior Tafuna, linebacker in high school, comes in, finishes his career at the University of Utah as a defensive tackle. And college football today does not look like that. It is shopping in the portal. It is big budgets. It is all these things. And at the end of the day, it really requires talent still to win at this level, as it does at almost every level. We can debate if that's still true in the NBA with the way what the Pacers have done. But you have to have talent, and I don't know that this Utah team has the level of talent that they are used to, in the sense of we've had guys in the program that we've developed that know the Utah way, that play fundamental football, that fit into this defense fundamentally, that, a brand new offense up on the hill. And look, you've got one of the most exciting players in college football. It is worth the price of admission just to go watch Devin Dampier play. There's a lot of question marks about how long can he stay healthy. The transition for him from Mountain West competition into the Big 12, all those kinds of things. So I can't bet, I would have a hard time betting my own money on that stuff, let alone OC's, right? But there's just a lot of question marks on this staff still. And, I was up at watching the 7-on-7 tournament just because I'm a high school football junkie, and that's where I spend most of my Friday nights is calling high school football games. And so I want to get to know those players. And the one thing that I felt as I was talking to staffers and people around the program was just how how aware they are of how bad last year was and how dedicated they are to fixing it.
That's a good point, because I think a lot of fans, and I think a good amount of media, and we're maybe led by us here, home of the Utes, have been lured into the line of thinking that just stay healthy and be fine, but that there may have been more issues than that, and we don't know until we have a healthy team, and maybe they still struggle a little bit.
When writing was a thing, I wrote an article for the Salt Lake Tribune just as a fill-in. I think Newman was out because
Yeah. I remember this.
pregnancy, out with the pregnancy. Not him, but his wife. Something you understand well.
Yes.
I just went up to the spring practice. They opened up a spring practice, and my biggest takeaway was, as long as Cam Rising is healthy, this team will be great. Otherwise, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
That was 2 years ago, and that was the general theme for that program, that team, for a 2-year stretch. Now we're into the post-Cam Rising era. We don't really know what this team is anymore. Do they still have the defensive, prowess? It's always going to be a strong defensive team in the sense that that's where Kyle's going to put all of his eggs, and you've got Morgan Scalley, and there's no knocking those two. Like, their resumes are set in stone. They are great at that part of it. Can you do the plug-and-play thing with all the corners that you've brought in now? Is the safety room developed the way that everybody really thinks it is? I like Rabbit Evans. I like Teo Johnson. Teo Johnson, when he was coming out of high school, I always thought he was a better athlete on the offensive side of the football. So learning the safety position has been a transition for him, and we've seen that as he's kind of bounced around from corner to nickel and then finally to safety.
And a great year at safety last year.
Mm-hmm.
He showed he could do that.
I've deviated really far from like most trusted to least trusted.
You started out saying O-line.
Mm-hmm. Then I started knocking the coaching staff a little bit. Now I'm out here like picking at the safeties, but that's the overarching point that I want to make here is that this is a team that we don't know as much about as we have in years past. Honestly, I think that's a good thing in the sense of like the doors of the program have really tightened up. It's quiet up there. And in years past, you've heard things leaking out and heard conversations about, we think this guy's great. We think this guy has a chance to do this and that, that, other. They've just basically wrapped everything in bubble wrap and gone to work. And I think that's a really positive thing, but on the flip side of it, it's if I'm setting expectations out here for people, I'm not going to put my name on the line for anything outside of the stuff that I haven't already seen and that I don't already know. And that is why the offensive line is number one, because I know how good Spencer Fano is. I also know how good Caleb Lomu is and how strong he was throughout the year. He was a little more up and down in the sense of like lacking the consistency, but his highs were really high. And he really finished the year strong. And I know the hardest part about offensive line play, and especially when you're in my position, you're trying to explain it to other people, and they want to know everything that you know.
Well, it's probably the thing that's most invisible to football fans is offensive line. I think probably even more than defensive line. I think people might say that line of scrimmage is, but I think offensive line more so because it's so easy just to follow the ball, and they never have the ball, right? And so it's like you miss all of the great footwork, the great this is what a good run block looks like. This is what a good pass block looks like, and it's very complex. It's a pretty complex thing, especially because it's not something that people pay that close attention to unless they're an offensive lineman or offensive line guru, right?
And I'd love to teach everybody from the 25 years of experience I've had of playing, coaching, and analyzing the group. It's just never going to happen. You're never going to see the game through my eyes. But what we can talk about is what you're seeing. And I think a lot of Utah fans last year saw pockets collapsing and pressure on a quarterback, and a quarterback that really wasn't comfortable back there or escaping. And
it's funny, like Isaac, and this is not to knock on Bryson Barnes anyway, but Isaac has seemed to, going into it based on his high school tape and his athleticism, that you could just tell he has before he stepped in the pocket. He seemed to be a guy that would be able to handle that. His mobility would be able to handle those kind of situations. And I bring up Bryson Barnes' name because he's more athletic than you think, but he certainly struggled to get away from the rush in the times that he had to start and play in games. So you would have thought that when you had to turn to Isaac, that wouldn't have been as big of a problem, but it certainly was last year for Isaac. And I know a lot of that is inexperience. The guy was a true freshman. Like, you can't expect him to just be able to avoid everything. But I expected him to be able to use his athleticism a little bit better than he did.
And I think some of that too was the system that he was in, and yet the kind of athleticism that Bryson, exhibited. For example, he's very downhill runner, and you saw the times where they started getting him going downhill. The second half of the Washington State game, he's a lot more productive. Same with Isaac. You've got to figure out what his athletic ability is, and
you don't just say, "Hey, avoid it." You got to be able to channel it somewhere. That makes sense.
Yep, and I think he's a little undersized as a quarterback. We don't need to get into breaking it down that much, but
yeah, the plan is he's not going to play much this year. So hopefully we don't have to focus too much on.
And the guy who is going to play has all the athleticism. Yeah. He can go outside, he can inside, he can run between the tackles, he can do boots, he can scramble, he can escape.
He has the experience, the college experience now to be like, this is how I can avoid this kind of pressure that's coming too, that Isaac just didn't have to.
Yep, 100%. And so I think all that is to say that the most, and this is such a like an oxymoron in the conversation, where my most trusted group is the offensive line, but really the key component in pass protection is the quarterback every single time. And so if the quarterback is not operating at 100% in terms of getting the protection where it needs to go, or being aware of what the protection is doing up front, if you're putting the calls on Jaron Kump, for example, that's a huge that causes issues, right? And so I think sometimes there were plays or moments where Isaac's head was swimming so much last year. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is I know what you saw. It looked ugly, and at times it was really ugly. It is better than it probably looked, number one. Number two, I think the biggest thing that I love about this Utah football team, this offensive system that they've brought in, is the versatility in the running game is so much better. And versatility means they're not running inside zone from under center double tight every single first down. And I know why Andy Ludwig did that. It was because you had to set up the play action and all the downfield throws.
Yeah, play action was such a huge part of Ludwig's offense.
Huge. And that's really how they were so good at scheming explosive plays, in the sense of like, hey, you're going to be able to complete a 20-yard pass just because of how the offense is designed. And all that stuff was built into it, in the sense of like, we can get 10 to 15 explosive plays, and that's a big thing in what they believe, how they view the game analytically. And so when you didn't hit on those every single time with reliability the way that Cam did, it really bogged down the offense. And so it made the run game look even worse, because you're running that run play as much to set everything up and wear down a defense.
What do we do when the run game looks bad? Who do we blame first? Not the running back. We blame the offensive line.
Line. So I'm not arguing with anybody who's saying it looked bad last year. It did, and it was. Look at the record. At the end of the day, it is a results-based business.
Yeah.
But I think my confidence level is that I know Jim Harding wants to run different stuff in the run game. I know he wants to get out and move. I know they're going to do that more. We saw it in the spring game.
He's got the offense that's going to allow him to do that. Yeah.
We saw screen passes. You've got really athletic guys on the front five. I think you're finally, a guy like Tanoa Tongiai, who in the past we saw slid out to tackle, is finally playing in a natural position in guard. And that was one of OC's, start bench cuts that kind of cut me a little deep, because he had Garrett Bowles, Spencer Fano, and Darren Paulo. And in my head, I'm like, well, Darren Paulo is the obvious cut, because he was never really a tackle. He was a guard all along.
Yeah.
So all that to say, like, that's why I trust this group. That's why it would be the place where I would invest all of
OC's money,
all my thousands of pennies.
all of OC's more than thousands of pennies.
Yeah, exactly.
Surely. So I love that. Love the explanation too. I'm gonna go with you too. I know I kind of went at you a little bit about, really, you're not picking the coaching staff, but I think I trust the O-line the most too, because you've got two tackles who could be the best two tackles in college football this year. That's what people are talking. The way people are talking about Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomo. And if they're not, they're gonna, if they live up to the expectations of how well they're gonna play, they're gonna be one of the best tackle combinations in college football. And that part is obviously so important to pass protection and getting things done on offense. It's those two tackle spots. You mentioned the other experience they have on the line too. It's one of the most experienced position groups, if not the most, certainly on the offense and on the entire team. So it's hard not to trust them the most, even more than the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
at this point, I think. And part of that is you have to take into account, big part of the coaching staff is brand new offensive guys.
Yep.
The one side of the ball is the same. The other side is not. So
But
we
the
have
one
to kinda see it.
holdover previously from that offensive staff is Jim Harding, right?
Right, and
Freddie
there you go.
Whittingham. I shouldn't
Yeah.
discount Freddie, but
Yeah, you got who also tight ends also figure into the blocking and the blocking part of things too with the offensive line. So yes, that I'm with you on that one. For me, the least trusted part is still wide receiver, and I don't know that it can't be the least trusted part of this team until we see that whatever new receiver that's supposed to be awesome performs, and ideally more than one, right? But at least one guy shows that they can be the number one guy. I think Dorian Singer absolutely would have been that last year. He showed that showed flashes of that even with the very unideal quarterback situation. So he would have been. We wouldn't be talking about how receivers let us down again if they had an ideal quarterback situation. But then Singer's gone too, so you're starting over in that regard. So that for me is my least trusted part. What about you?
had Dorian Singer won his appeal, how much does that change?
Oh, I think completely changes it for me. I might see. I might say something like special teams is least trusted because that there's so much turnover on who the returners are every year. It feels like the team has. There's been a huge detraction from the Matt Gay, Andy Phillips days and Hackett, Wishnowski days where it was like that was some years the best part of the team other than the defense. It's been suspect since those days. For even in the Pac-12 championship years, you could not totally trust the kicking game and sometimes that punting game, and the amount of breakdowns they've had in kick return over the past few years too. That's probably where I would go if Dorian Singer had been able to get that extra year of eligibility.
This is another question that I have for you because I agree with you. My least trusted position group is the wide receiver group. Are we putting Nate Johnson in as wide receivers?
Ooh, that's a good question because he's technically going to play everywhere, right? He's going to probably take some handoffs. He's going to play wildcat quarterback, and then he's going to line up his receiver. I suppose because he will get a good amount of time in that athlete role as receiver, he would count. Change things for you?
Yes and no.
We haven't seen him play that position yet. So
I still don't know that he's a great wide receiver. I know he's a great athlete, and I know he's capable of doing a lot with the football. And so that part of his game has me excited to see how Jason Beck, who is a known creative when it comes to getting guys the football and running plays and things like that, that part of it does have me thinking at the very least like, okay, I'm curious. But if what I saw in the spring game is translates into the fall, meaning he's still learning the wide receiver position, he is the great hope for that group right now. I like Dadron Zipper. Creed Whittemore's fine. Nothing from my perspective. I didn't see anything out of him that has me just salivating to see what he can do. The guys that they've brought in, I'm curious to see how they do. They're a little bit of the last chance Yui kind of wide receivers, and so
third, fourth school for some of these guys. Yeah,
I loved Otto Tia in high school, and I still need to see him really buckle down and develop into the player that I think he is capable of becoming. Now, I do have a lot of hope that Micah Simon can make that happen. I think Micah Simon's a really, really good coach. I think he's a breath of fresh air for that room. I think the fact that he knows Jason Beck's system, that they've worked together, is all positives. And so in that regards, like, least confident, but maybe the hope and the optimism for where that place could be is the highest.
Okay, interesting.
Because I kind of know what I'm getting with the offensive line group. I don't know so much about the wide receiver group. I have a pretty good idea of what I'm getting with the quarterback group.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe high upside, even though the least amount of confidence. I don't disagree with that. Coming up on the Sean O'Connell Show, James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC today. He's calling some fights in Wichita later today. We'll get him on the show at 1:30 to talk about that, air some grievances. We're gonna have we decided it. Runnin' Utes legend Parker Van Dyke gonna join us. You're gonna hear the highlight of his iconic 3-point buzzer beater in the comeback against UCLA. We'll talk to him memories about that. His pro career. He's worked his way up to the G League this last year, and reaction to Alex Jensen hire, and so much more. Runnin' Utes talk with Parker Van Dyke next on the Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
Here comes Bearfield. Cedric into the front court. 4 seconds, 3 seconds. Back to Van Dyke. Deep three up. And good! It's good! It's good! The Utes win it at the buzzer!
Can you believe that?
They win it at the buzzer!
Oh my goodness.
Utah wins it at the buzzer! They beat the Bruins! Down 23 in the second half! Oh my goodness! Parker Van Dyke plays the hero in Westwood!
How can you not smile when you hear that clip? That's Parker Van Dyke, of course. You heard it over and over again from Bill Riley there. Game-winning 3 at the buzzer against UCLA 2019 at Pauley Pavilion, courtesy Ute Sports Network and Learfield at the time. Bill Riley, Jimmy Soto on the call. Jimmy just laughing in the middle, all over Bill's call, which is makes it even better. You love that. Just the genuine reaction from the great Jimmy Soto. That shot, as you heard, capped a 23-point second-half comeback for the Runnin' Utes. They win by 1 on that great shot. We've decided Runnin' Utes legend Parker Van Dyke on the line with us. Parker, it's a pleasure to have you on. It's the first time I don't think we've ever met in person, so it's great to meet you over the phone here, and great to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
It's great to be on, guys. Thanks for having me, and thanks for taking a trip down memory lane. That's pretty cool. That's an unforgettable moment and an unforgettable game. That I don't know if my life will get any better after that. Honestly,
really,
that was a special moment, and it happened to be on Coach Tommy Connor's birthday, so there was just a lot going on that day.
Wow, yeah, an all-time. I mean, we were talking about this. I'm not sure that because of all the NCAA tournament success that Runnin' Utes program has had all time, maybe it gets lost in those things. But certainly in the last 10 years, an all-time great moment in Runnin' Utes history. How did that feel to when it happened, and how does it feel going? You know, when you hear it again, like you just did now, knowing, man, I did that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me as a Utah kid growing up in Salt Lake City, as a Utah fan, going to all the games, it was a dream to play for the Utes. And part of that dream was also to try to etch my name into the legendary history of Utah basketball that we all know and love. You know, the Billy McGills and the Vern Gardners and the Danny Vrains and Van Horn and Andre Miller. And so, I wasn't the type of player of those guys, but I was able to have a moment that kind of puts me in the history of Utah basketball, which for me is so amazing, and it's worth everything for me because I'm such a fan of the history of the program, and so to have at least a moment that will be remembered, in the Utah basketball history books is very special, and something that I'll always be grateful for.
Parker, you talk about historical context, and you also played at a local high school that has a pretty deep history of great players. One-on-one tournament, you, Josh Grant, and Troy Bolton. Who's walking out of that with the title?
Well, if we're talking fictional Troy Bolton, he's pretty tough, but real-life Zac Efron I don't think has a chance. Man, Josh Grant would be tough. I mean, he's got the size advantage on me. But I would take high school Parker Van Dyke versus high school Troy Bolton and Josh Grant. Later on, Josh was probably a better player than me, but high school 17-year-olds versions of us, I would take myself. But Josh probably would contest that.
So I want to follow that up because I think that question is so much in jest, but I also think it kind of encapsulates just how far you've come as a basketball player. And you mentioned, you talk about the great players in the history of Utah basketball, and it's a very long list, and all those names that I recognize, the fact that you can name off somebody like Billy the Hill McGill, that tells me a lot about your knowledge of that. But I also want to talk about your development a little bit as a player. You've come so far from the University of Utah to where last year you're playing in my estimation, one of the second best basketball leagues in the world. What is that journey been like for you to leave Utah and know that there probably weren't a lot of people out there believing that you could do this, to now having accomplished that much?
It's been an incredible journey, and I'll tell you what, it starts from, the foundation that I was able to create at East High School, and then going into the University of Utah. I was able to play with such great teammates and such a great coaching staff. They kind of laid the foundation for me, and I think a lot of people forget, when you're in college, you're still pretty young. I mean, you're still young in your basketball journey. And so when I finished at Utah, I knew my best basketball was still ahead of me, that I had a lot of potential and still was kind of progressing. I wish I played in today's game where I feel like players are playing for 7 or 8 years. I only played for 4. But I just thought I still had a lot of runway left in my career. And, I've been fortunate to have some great opportunities in Europe and then the G League, like you said, where I've been able to showcase that. And so, it's been great. I mean, there was times it wasn't great, though. There was times I wanted to stop. There was times I wanted to quit. Had some rough times during COVID, but was able to keep pursuing and keep pushing and kind of using those things that I learned at the University of Utah from, how to persevere and how to be coachable and things like that, and just keep going. And as I kept going, I was rewarded with doors and opportunities, and it's been a very special career. And I really had a great experience last year in the G League playing for the Austin Spurs and playing in the Spurs organization. So, I'm just extremely grateful for it. And a lot of credit goes to the time I spent at the University of Utah for preparing me for the journey.
We're talking with Parker Van Dyke here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Me, James Peterson, that guy Bryan Brown filling in for OC today on the show. Tell us about your experience, what that was like playing in Europe, because we hear the stories about how intense and how different the fan bases can be over there, how it's very the diehard part of the basketball fandom over there is a lot like the soccer fandom over there. We've heard some crazy stories from other people. What was your experience in Estonia, Germany, and Spain?
A lot of great experiences, and a lot of I've met a lot of great friends have come from those experiences and those teams. A big adjustment Americans have is just living over there. Is just moving over there, living in Europe, and adjusting and adapting to the new cultures, new places, different languages, things like that. That's a big part of the challenge, is just trying to be happy while you're living over there, and kind of embracing the differences between Europe and America. And then, I think a big thing that's it's a big adjustment over there is in the States, we play 3-4 games a week. We're constantly playing games. We don't practice as much. It's more, game centric. Over there, you're practicing 5-6 times a week and playing 1 game a week.
Oh, wow.
And that's a little bit of a grind where I call it an 8-month-long football season. You're over there practicing Monday through Friday. You'll play Saturday, take Sunday off, and then kind of run it back. And that's a grind for sure, and that's different than Americans are used to. The positive of that, though, is like you're saying, the fan devotion. Every game is a big game, is very important, because you don't play as much. So that's where it does have a little bit of a football feel. Every game is a big deal. Every game matters, and so it makes those games very, very intense and a lot of fun. Especially in Germany. Germany has great fan bases. Just about everywhere I played in Germany had really, really good fan bases. So a lot of fun to play, and it's special to continue to play in games that matter and play in high competitive games against good players. And so the opportunity to continue to do that after college, even if you don't make the NBA, is a special opportunity for American players.
Yeah, I would think so. I know you said you're practicing a lot more, so maybe this answer would be no, but did you feel like you had more energy, you were fresher for each game since you played about 1 game a week instead of multiple?
Yes and no, and because sometimes those practices would wear you down,
Okay.
Until all of a sudden you're practicing every day, and these aren't light practices. Usually they're pretty hard practices. You're going 5-on-5. Physical and long practices. And so sometimes if you didn't do a good job of preparing yourself, taking care of your body, sometimes you'd be pretty beat by the end of the weekend when that game would happen. And so over time, though, you kind of get used to the schedule. And if you have a good coach who has a good understanding of how to manage the week and manage the players throughout the week, because the goal is to be your best at your best and the freshest when you get to the game. But if there's any overseas players listening, they know that that's not always the case. But that's something that's a learning curve you have to take on as a player, as a professional. Like, I got to make sure I'm at my best for game day, regardless of what's happening throughout the week.
Parker, you've had a varied experience in terms of your basketball career. I'm going to redirect this a little bit up to what's going on in the Hill right now at the University of Utah. And while I don't expect you to have a breakdown on every player on the roster, I do think you have a unique understanding of the challenges the program faces and kind of the direction that it should trend in as they move forward. Give us your thoughts on, first of all, Alex Jensen as the hire as head coach, and then what you would do maybe if you were in his position in trying to rebuild what's been a really proud program.
Well, I'm super excited about Alex Jensen, that hire. I actually was able to meet him surprisingly for the first time earlier this week. And I think he's a great coach. In my mind, he was the only hire for the U that it needed to happen. So I'm so glad it did. The program needed a Utah guy like Alex, who has his experience and has his resume, but also has a connection to the glory days of Utah basketball. The Utah basketball fan, that's what they remember. That's what they reminisce about, is the days of Majerus. And, Alex was a centerpiece of those teams. And so to have a Utah guy connected to that era is so important. And there's a level of excitement, I think, around the program that there hasn't been for a long time because of that. And so that's something that's so big about him being, the new head coach. And, I'm super excited for this team. It's a brand new team, but it seems that we seem to have a level of talent and level of athleticism that we haven't seen for a while. And so I'm excited for these group of guys. My thing that I hope can happen with Alex at the helm is that the players coming into the program and the current players truly understand where they are. They understand how special the University of Utah is, how much rich history we have, and that it means something to have success as a Utah basketball player. That when you have success with Utah across your chest and you have the opportunity to put your name in the history books with these great names that I've mentioned before, that means that's really special and that means something. And so I hope that Alex can sell that vision to these players to get them to want to stay and to want to come here because they want to be a part of that history. And that's something that's going to be a really hard sell, because in today's game, people are free agents after every year and they're taking more money. And I understand that. That's part of the business. And I think it's great for players. But if we can find a way to get these players to buy into the great culture and the great program that we have, that'll get guys to stay. I think that'll get the top local guys to come and want to be a part of it. And that'll help build something, because that's what Utah basketball needs. They need guys who are there for 2 or 3 years, and that's how you're going to compete at, the highest levels, when you got guys who have been there for 2 or 3 years. And so for me, that was something that helped me outlast guys and beat out guys, I think, while I was there, is because for me, there was no going anywhere else. I wanted to have success at Utah. I didn't want to just have success as a college basketball player. I wanted to have success at Utah because it meant something to me. And so if we can help the current and future players embrace that vision, which I think Alex can because he's a Utah guy, that's something that'll really help the program. And I think that's something the fans want to see, is they want to see the same guys wearing the same uniform for 2 or 3 years.
I love that, Parker, and I think every Utah fan, Runnin' Utes fan that's listening to this, shares that same vision that you have, and we certainly do here on the Home of the Utes. So, got to let you go. We really appreciate your time, Parker. Let's definitely do this again when Sean's back in the air chair. We'll have to get you on. You guys can talk a little bit too. Sound good?
Yeah, would love to be back on. Appreciate you guys having me on, and excited for the future of Utah basketball.
One thing, Parker, just before we let you go, I know you've got a basketball camp coming up. Did you want to promote that a little bit?
Yeah, I've got, in the summers when I'm home for the off season, I usually run basketball camps, and I've got probably the best basketball camp I've put on yet. I'm doing it at my alma mater, East High School. It's next week, Monday through Wednesday. That's the 23rd through the 25th, 9 to 11 a.m. at East High School. And I'm super excited to be able to run that for, all the kids in the area, and to be able to give back to the community. And like we've talked about, I've been so fortunate and so blessed with a great basketball career. I've had great coaches, and so it's my goal now to take those things I've learned and pass them on to the community and help the future generation, benefit from some of the coaching and some of the things I've learned, so that they can build their careers. And so I'm really passionate about that. I'm looking forward to it. That's next week at East High School, the 23rd to the 25th.
Is there a place that parents and kids need to sign up? Need to go to sign up?
Yeah, the best way to sign up is on Instagram. I've got a link in my account at Parker Van Dyke or at PVD Camps 5. Those are my two Instagram accounts. You can find a link in the bio there to sign up, and it's for kids from third grade all the way up through high school. And I'm a big believer in camps. I grew up going to a lot of camps, but I think the camps need to be ran the right way. And one message I would like to share to all kids who are coming or who might come is, you don't go to camps just to get better, because the reality is you're not going to get better in a 2 or 3 day camp if that's all you do. You go to camps to learn how to get better. And so I'm hoping to teach kids the tools that they can learn in my camp to then implement for the rest of the summer. Because that's where you really separate yourself as a kid is, okay, yeah, I'm going to camps, I'm playing games, I'm on this AAU team, but am I taking what I learned and am I applying it and using it when, on my own time? And so that's something I want to try to help give a message to the kids is, thank you for coming. It's great that you're here, but now take what you've learned and, hey, go do it on your own. Go into a gym with your dad or with some friends and go work on these things on your own, because that's what's really going to help you separate yourself and become a great player.
Couldn't have said it better, Parker, as a guy who grew up in camps, and also one of the reasons I probably didn't have much of a career is because that's all I did. So that's a good – had fun doing that, and then thought, hey, I don't need to work anymore. I did this at camp. So great message there, and be sure to head out to Parker's camp. Give the details a little bit after we do let you go here, Parker, once again. So thank you for coming on, and definitely we'll need to do this again soon.
Awesome. Anytime, guys. Appreciate you.
So that's that camp, by the way. He said Monday through Wednesday next week at East High School. Go to his Instagram. He say at Parker Van Dyke Instagram, and he's got a link there for any parents out there that got kids who love basketball, or you just want to get them to try another sport. Head over there, sign up, and go check that out next week. I can't imagine getting much better instruction in this area than from a guy like Parker Van Dyke. We gave you his resume. He talked quite a bit about it. So.
I got the link pulled up right now. Should I just go ahead and sign us both up?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
I need to work on my skills. So let's go.
I know he said that it was grade school to high school. I feel like
sometimes
maybe
I think like a grade school kid. So
high school level maturity over on this end. So,
no, but seriously, go check that out. Parents out there and kids who want to get better at their game, learn how to get better, and then you got to do the work the rest of the way to actually get better. Learn from me, people.
Spoken by somebody who's like proven that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, awesome stuff from Parker Van Dyke. Hot lunch is next, Bryan, and it's kind of RSL related to RSL's big star right now. He's killing it in the Gold Cup with the U.S. Men's National Team. We'll talk about that next in the Hot Lunch. This is the Sean O'Connell Show. I'm James Peterson. That's Bryan Brown filling in for OC here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hot lunch time on the Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC today. You'll get to hear from OC later in the show. Don't you worry about that. 1:30, we'll air some grievances with him, talk PFL. Got Tony Jones coming up a few minutes from now. Talk a lot of NBA Finals, NBA Draft with Tony. Love having Tony on the show. But for the hot lunch, I want to go a little soccer talk here on the Sean O'Connell Show. I know, something we don't do a whole lot of, but Gold Cup's underway right now, Bryan Brown, and there's a local guy just who's making an incredible, I guess not first impression, but an incredible impression on head coach Mauricio Pochettino and U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, I don't know if
Diego Luna, by the way, is who we're talking about.
For anybody who's in the know with RSL right now, it's pretty obvious who we were talking about, right? And I'm not going to go ahead and say that I'm a big-time soccer guy, but I do follow it enough and obviously listen to the station, and so I listen to OC's more hockey, Spence a little more soccer.
Yeah, definitely.
So you get a lot of that good stuff. I think the interesting conversation around him has been, once the Miller family took over, what was going to happen to those good young players, and they came out and said pretty staunchly, didn't say him by name, but we want to keep our good young talent here.
We don't want to sell them to help our bottom line.
Yeah,
like we've seen.
What a novel concept if you want people to stay interested in your franchise. But
listen, that way of doing things in the last couple of ownership groups for RSL, that's in line with what happens in the soccer world. Mm-hmm. Like you, which is one of the maddening things for people who aren't lifelong soccer fans, as you try to get used to the sport, is that also you don't just keep your good players all the time because they're good players. Like, not necessarily. It's part of the strategy of the front office.
And I do think some of what happens in soccer should translate to other sports. Like, I wish the NBA would adopt a loan system, right? Because I would have loved to see Lauri Markkanen get loaned out for a year last year and go play for a contender and see what he could have done, because the Jazz clearly weren't interested in winning. But that's one of those. We can say that for next week when we have 4 shows and no sports going on to talk about. Lots of draft prep.
Fix the NBA.
Yeah, boy. Maybe some airing of grievances for next Friday too. But Diego is such a interesting player to me because he's really the only reason to watch RSL right now. In the sense of, like, they're
all
not
due respect
good.
to some of the other young talent.
Mm-hmm.
They're developing some of the young players really well.
Yeah.
And I know getting the results they want, and Diego just jumps off the pitch as you watch him. You love that, huh? Soccer guy over here.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to use into touch in a sentence coming up here. You and Coach Lasso.
The pace on the ball, yeah.
But I think it's part of being a sports fan that's really so hard and frustrating is that everybody's competing to win a championship, and you do have to take steps back at a time. And I think the ownership transition eventually will be a good thing, but right now RSL missed out on some opportunities. They had some bad luck come their way with the last transfer window. Had a deal set up that fell through. Wasn't entirely on them. And so this team right now is a little uninteresting. Now they are starting to bring up some of the younger players from the system, the guys that they've developed. And so it's fun to see them on the field now and seeing what they're able to do. But I think really what you have is you have a pillar now in Diego Luna, who's a very marketable player, a very good player, kind of has shades of like Kyle Beckerman in the sense of not style of play, but in the sense of like, this is a guy that a lot of people have underestimated. And once he gets, up the ladder, people realize, whoa, he's really good.
When it's a different leadership style too, different personality from Kyle, but he's that kind of dynamic leader that Kyle grew into be for RSL. Certainly nowhere near down the road in his development that Kyle ended up being as a legend of the franchise and the captain, right? Mm-hmm. Our Derek Jeter here, the captain. But he's doing that in his own way, which is really cool, which is part of what going back to what I said about the U.S. men's national team, that's part of what Pochettino loves about him. He loves his attitude. He loves how positive he is. He loves how much energy he brings to himself and the group, and it permeates the rest of the group. And that's what, Jenny Taft from Fox Sports had a mid-game sideline report talking just about that. The other thing, if you're a soccer fan, you heard this now. It's almost become an apocryphal story over the last couple of months of how he got his nose smashed up in a game against Mexico earlier this year, and he told Pochettino, "Get me back out there." Mm-hmm. And then once they got it cleared by the medical staff, he got him back out there, and he played. Showed so much toughness doing that. Pochettino said he's got big you-know-whats in the post-game show, in the post-match show. So it was he's made quite the impression, and it's really cool to see. It's really cool that the rest of the world, if he continues this trajectory and makes the World Cup roster and in this Gold Cup, has a chance to see what we have already begun to see here locally about Diego Luna.
Do you feel like he's a lock for the World Cup roster? Because I feel like he's getting to that.
A lot of smarter soccer people than myself are saying that, so I trust them. It feels far enough out that I'm not totally sure enough myself to say that's going to happen, set in stone. And there's other veterans from the last World Cup cycle that aren't playing in the Gold Cup that are going to be on the team too. So I think it still remains to be seen. But I feel pretty good about a lot of the other soccer analysts who went out on the limb and said yes, he's a World Cup player. I feel pretty good about that at this point. Yeah.
And that's a nice building block to have if you're RSL right now, because
Absolutely.
I think one thing is everybody's striving to be better. Great players want to play with other great players. And so if you have a player like Diego, and I think you talk about his attitude, I think there are other guys on the roster that could benefit a little bit from sharing his attitude. And again, you've got younger guys in the program that the team is trying to bring along and bring up and introduce, and it's good that they're getting some playing time now where he's away as well, right? But when he comes back, they're going to see a different level of his investment and attitude and leadership and everything else. And so it's nothing like in a season where there hasn't been a lot of positives. Like if there was some sort of development where like Keontae George had been called up to like a USA Select team for Jazz fans, or Taylor Hendricks, for example,
or like Walker did play for the World Cup team, the basketball World Cup team, and then subsequently had an off year last year, but then rebounded, more than nicely this past year. If he'd been able to show what he did this year in year two, there would have been a lot more excitement about, hey, look at what he did with the World Cup. Look what this did for him. I think we can still say that, but it was far enough removed that it didn't feel like it benefited him all that much. So
I feel like Jazz fans would have been excited if something like that had happened this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Isaiah Collier getting the rookie assist record, that's fun. I think everybody kind of understood after a little while that it was like, well, Stockton was only playing 12 minutes a game as a rookie, so like maybe it's not as big a deal. And there just wasn't a lot to promote. Like that's really the angle that I look at from this is like we're talking like something that I can enjoy because it is the hot lunch segment, right?
Yeah.
That's going to make me feel good and be tasty as a fan. It's, hey, there's something positive with my team right now. And, it is a kind of a tough era right now in the Utah sports landscape where a lot of these teams are in rebuild mode at the same time. But at the same time, to know that there's a player out there like that and I think that's the exciting part about the draft for me is that the Jazz could potentially get, I have my hopes that they somehow finagle a deal to get VJ Edgecombe, but good luck with that because I think the NBA, the secret's out on him. But for RSL to have a player like that already in the stable, in the fold, and to see that national recognition too, I think that's big for Diego. The thing that keeps running through the back of my mind, did you see him go to the Andor premiere?
I missed that.
It's a good clip.
I totally missed that. I'm going to have to look that up. But, there's the hot lunch segment there. Diego Luna showing out for U.S. men's national team. Excited to see him the rest of the Gold and the team in the rest of the Gold Cup, they certainly got themselves a young franchise pillar that is RSL. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM welcomes Nate Jackson to Kingsbury Hall. Speaking of University of Utah, November 7th. Tickets are on sale now. And listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts the rest of this week into next week as well for your chance to win a pair of tickets. Tony Jones on the other side. Game 7 NBA Finals. We've yet to talk about it. We're going to talk all about it with Tony Jones. We're less than a week away from the NBA draft as well. What do the Jazz do? That and more with Tony Jones on the other side. This is the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Point deficit, OKC. 45 seconds to go. Pass stolen by Halliburton. How about Tyrese Halliburton? No look. And Siakam with the jam. Halliburton delivering in Game 6. 20-point lead, Indiana.
That's Pascal Siakam's poster dunk in transition off the Halliburton steal. Pacers' dominant win last night in the NBA Finals. They were up 30 at one point. Win by 17. Courtesy ESPN Radio, Mark Kestisher on the call. Game 7 Sunday night in OKC. I love that we're getting to Game 7 in the NBA Finals. Can't wait for it. Coverage starting at 5. We'll have it for you here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, brought to you by Budweiser and Bud Light. We are your home of the NBA Finals. So excited to talk more about this with Tony Jones from The Athletic. Tony, what's going on, man?
What's going on? How are you?
Doing great. You got me, James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC today. Thanks for coming on, Tony. Your thoughts on Game 6, Pacers' big bounce back win, obviously big rout.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a big bounce back win for them. I was reasonably certain that the Pacers would play really well. I was pretty shocked at how poorly Oklahoma City played. I thought that, given the fact that, they were, on the cusp of their first NBA title in Oklahoma City, I thought that, they would play a better game. It turned out that they didn't. But Indiana's been, as resilient a team as we've seen in the playoffs. So I mean, I did not think that they were going to go quietly, but I did think that the Thunder would play much better, and I thought that we were going to have a much closer game than it turned out. I didn't anticipate that blowout at all.
Tony, this series has had a lot of adjustments, and I think you've seen a real chess match between two very talented coaches in Mark Daigneault and Rick Carlisle. Did you see anything last night that makes you think that maybe the Thunder are in bigger trouble going into Game 7 than previously thought?
Well, I mean, the big adjustment that Indiana, first of all, I'm not surprised that this series is going 7. I picked this series to go 7 before the series started, so I'm not surprised that this is where it is. I thought that these were two even teams. I know the consensus didn't have it that way. I know the consensus was that this would be one of those this would be a blowout or a short series, but I didn't think that this would be a short series at all. What I did think in terms of adjustments that helped the Pacers last night was, that they finally kind of sold out against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They finally, put 5 guys in the lane defensively and actually forced the ball, beyond the three-point line and made guys make shots beyond the three-point line. And that's the first time that in this series that we've seen that. And I thought that, that was something that Oklahoma City wasn't anticipating. And, obviously they went like 1 for their first 16 from three-point range. But I think that that's one of the things that, you kind of have to do against this Thunder team. You have to, make Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams see bodies in the lane. And I thought that for the first time in this series, they did that last night.
That was definitely something that those two in particular were able to do almost at will through the first 5 games was get in the lane. And I've got Jalen Williams going in the lane, that's ridiculous scoop layup with both hands that he does, just burned in the back of my head as you talk about that, Tony. I wonder if that was not. I mean, it's not intentional to hold something back that you might have success with, but maybe was that something that Rick Carlisle late in the series is like, do you think is there a chance he's going, I know we can do this later, but I don't want to show it too early? Is that maybe what happened here with that adjustment they made, or is that just like, no, like I'm done watching him go through the lane, we need to make this adjustment now?
Well, the danger of selling out, James, you play basketball, you're a shooter. The danger of selling out is that you're giving up wide open threes, right? Like you're giving up, not only good looks for, NBA players, you're giving up good looks for anybody. And, the thing that helped Indiana obviously last night is that, the Thunder just didn't make those shots. But at some point, you had to figure out a way to just kind of make it a little bit more difficult for SGA and make it a little bit more difficult for Jalen Williams. And the danger of this, is that if you play the same way on Sunday, if you're Indiana, those role players for Oklahoma City are much more likely to make those shots at Paycom Center than they were on the road in Indianapolis. So, I think it's got to be, I don't think you have to adjust all the way back, but I think it's got to be more of a balance. Obviously, if you're Rick Carlisle and you're the Indiana Pacers, if you employ the same kind of defense, you're going to have to anticipate, the Lou Dort and Aaron Wiggins and Alex Caruso making a lot more of those shots. and you're going to have to take a lot more punches. At the end of the day, this was a 30-point game at the end of by the end of the third quarter. And, and I think that there were a number of reasons why we got to that point. But, it's going to be interesting to see what the film says for Indiana and, how they adjust to what they did in Game 6 and, what the defense will be for Game 7.
Tony, I want to make a joke about T.J. McConnell being the best player in this series, but talk about a little bit just how his style of play has impacted this and kind of in contrast to where, OKC is so hypercentric around SGA, but Indiana's been able to do this with a variety of players stepping up and not always being, the Tyrese Halliburton show.
Well, believe it or not, it's a really good matchup for T.J. McConnell because his style of play is, I'm just going to beat you into the lane off the dribble and I'm just going to get to my spot. And that's the style of play that you want a guard to have against a pressure defense. Oklahoma City pressures all over the floor. They get up into your shorts. And against that kind of a defense, it's hard to run offense and it's hard to run sets and it's hard to go through, your sets offensively and go through checks and balances and go through, go through different things. Sometimes against, teams that just get up into you, you just go by them and you get to the basket. And that is the best thing that T.J. McConnell does at an NBA level. At an NBA level, he's not somebody that you really want to actually run an offense. That's why he's coming off the bench. At the NBA level, the reason why he's been in the league for 10 years is that he can get paint touches off the dribble. So against this matchup, when OKC goes out and they challenge you and they challenge the dribble, McConnell's just going by him, going by people. And, because of the style of defense, that, they employ is basically you're just going by one guy and you're getting to the basket or you're getting to your spot in the mid-range 10 feet away. And that's why McConnell's been, so effective in this series because, the way Oklahoma City defends is right up his alley as a player. If you watch this series, it's been more difficult for Halliburton to run an offense against, the Thunder than it has been for McConnell to just go ahead and beat the Thunder off the dribble. The one thing I like about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is that, he's ball dominant, but he's not heliocentric, or he hasn't been always heliocentric. It's been more, he's ball dominant, but, they figure out ways to get other people involved. And, and that's probably, one of the best traits that SGA has. So it's been a really good matchup. And, I think it's been, pretty easily the best final series that we've seen since 2016 when that series against Golden State and the Cavaliers went 7 games. And I think it's been a really good showcase for the NBA as a whole.
I wanted to ask something Jazz related in that, but you mentioned something at the very end. I think this has been one of the best series that, like you mentioned, in almost 10 years. Do you feel like this is the beginning of a different version of the NBA? And are there lessons that not only the Jazz but other teams can take from this contest in terms of how to build a championship roster?
Well, team building is a lot different because, the CBA, because of the new CBA, you're just not going to be able to team build in the way that teams have built in the past. And, by that, I mean, having, 3 top-heavy players, you can have it, but it's just, probably not going to work at this point. You have to have depth in this era to win a championship. I think that was proven this year. I think it was proven last year with Boston. And there are top-heavy teams in this league, that ran out of gas at some point. The the Denver Nuggets, when they won a championship, they were 9 deep. This year they were about 7 deep, and they kind of ran out of gas against Oklahoma City in the second round. If they had 2 more guys that were playoff playable, they would have been more fresh in for Game 7, and they very well may have had a chance to beat Oklahoma City in that Game 7. The thing that stand out with Oklahoma City and the Indiana Pacers are 2 things. Number one, those have been unequivocally the 2 best teams in the league since January. And secondly, they've been the 2 deepest teams. Both of these teams go 10 deep, and not just 10 deep in bodies. The New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, yeah, they put bodies on the floor, but those weren't playoff players. Those weren't players that you want to play in a rotation in the postseason. Indiana has 10 guys that are playoff players, that are 16-game players. And the same goes for Oklahoma City. And I think that's going to be the new wave of the league. If you want to win a championship, you're going to have to do it with as much with depth as you're going to have to do it with top-heavy talent.
Yeah, that's something that stood out to me as I watched this playoff run. You mentioned your New York Knicks. They probably had among their 8-man rotation that Thibodeau stuck with for the entire regular season and most of those playoffs going into that Indiana series. I mean, you could argue they were much more talented than all but maybe a couple of the Pacers' top 8. But the Pacers had a couple more guys, right? And that depth seemed to matter a ton, and we saw that in the Western Conference with OKC as well play out. So that's been the thing that stood out to me is like it's the amount of guys you got, and it's not necessarily what your top end talent is going forward seems to be the thing that's gonna help you win out in the NBA. Transitioning to the NBA draft, because we're a week away from that, Tony. You're covering a couple of teams, including the Jazz, Sixers as well, with top 5 picks. I want to start with Sixers angle here too. That also may have something that may end up affecting the Jazz, what they do at 5 too. Ace Bailey made headlines, and you wrote about this as well, about canceling his workout with the Sixers. I'm just curious what you think that means for his draft stock. Does that mean if he's available at 5? Because if the Sixers say, okay, you don't want interest in us, we'll pick someone else. Is that a guy that you think the Jazz would be interested in taking, because he does seem to have a very high upside and star potential, but he's also there's a lot of question marks and a lot of reason to think that he won't end up seeing that potential. I just wonder what the fallout might be with this Ace Bailey stuff.
Well, the canceling draft workouts and all that stuff, I mean, that's let me keep it real. That's inconsequential.
Okay.
If teams want to draft you, it's not going to – a guy canceling a workout isn't going to stop a team from drafting. What's the thing that are making teams wary of Ace Bailey isn't, how he's handling, the pre-draft process. It's, what his floor is as a player and what his ceiling is as a player. It's the people that are around him. It's the interviews that he's given when, everybody got to interview him at the combine. So, and that's the other dirty little secret. I mean, people could say, hey, he's not working out for the Sixers, or he hasn't yet worked out for the Jazz. Well, the Jazz interviewed him. The Jazz interviewed him at the combine. The Sixers interviewed him at the combine. The Spurs interviewed him at the combine. The Hornets interviewed him at the combine. When you go to the combine, those interviews are mandated. So, these people have seen him and they've talked to him, you know, the advantage of getting him into your building is you get to go to dinner with him, you get to sit down with him and his family, you get to, you know, watch him go through a workout, things like that, you know, and those can be, you know, those can be tiebreakers. But, you know, 10 years ago, Dante Exum refused to work out for the Utah Jazz because the Jazz had Trey Burke, and, you know, those guys played the same position. Dante Exum, at the combine interview, we asked him about the Jazz, you know, whether he would go work out for the Jazz, and he turned out not to work out for the Jazz. And Exum told us, he said, why would I work out for the Utah Jazz? They have Trey Burke at my position. Like, he said it publicly. And guess what? The Utah Jazz drafted him because when they got to the 5th pick, they concluded that Dante Exum was the best player on the board. So, you know, if the Ace Bailey gets to the 3rd pick and, you know, the Philadelphia 76ers conclude that he's the best player on their personal board, they're going to take him. And if not, they're not going to take him. You know, the thing that dots pre-draft workouts at this point is that, you know, agents try to steer and try to manipulate the process to get their guys into the best position that, you know, they perceive to be possible. So, you know, and that's why you see some of the shenanigans go on that you see right now. That's why you see, you know, teams, you know, trying to get guys into their building, you know, and that's why you see, you know, kind of all of this back and forth, you know, because, you know, agents, you know, want to get their guys into the position where, you know, they you know, perceive where they're going to have the most opportunity. But once you get drafted, you are that team. You are with that team most likely for 7 to 8 years under that team's control. And that's why you see a lot of this stuff in the pre-draft process, because they know that, you know, there's no control left once the team drafts that person. So, you know, it's just posturing, you know, with Ace Bailey, and, you know, the things that are, you know, scaring teams off on Ace Bailey isn't, you know, whether he's going to work out for them or not. It's a whole bunch of other things, you know, with him as a player and, you know, with some of the people he has around him off the floor.
I know that everybody wants to know what the Jazz are going to do with the 5th pick, and I don't think the Jazz even know at this point. So I'm going to switch over and ask, what would you do if you were in charge of this whole situation, Tony, with that 5th pick? Would you trade? Would you be looking to move up? Or are you standing pat hoping that somebody that you like falls to you at 5th?
Well, I mean, I think the Jazz have, you know, some idea what they're going to do. I mean, they're going to, you know, I think that, you know, a lot of the options are open. I mean, they're taking phone calls, you know, if there's something that, you know, presents itself to trade up, you know, they won't hesitate. I don't know that they're going to trade back, you know, but I mean, I think that, you know, that door isn't closed. But, you know, if they make the pick, you know, they have a board. They've been getting guys in, and, you know, they've been working guys out. You know, and they're going to make a board, and they're going to take the best player available on their board once they get to 5. I mean, I know that Ace Bailey is in their conversation. I know that Trey Johnson's in that conversation. I know that Jeremiah Fears and Con Knipple and even Kaman Malawach are in those conversations at all. The thing with the 5th pick is, you know, I think that, you know, some dominoes will fall at 3 and 4. I don't expect VJ Edgecombe to be available at the 5th pick. You know, we'll see what happens with the rest of the board. But, you know, I think that if you are a Jazz fan right now, you can reasonably expect these 3 names to be off the board by the time the 5th pick rolls around. Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe. I think that right now, as of Friday, you can expect those 3 names to be off the board one way or the other once the fifth pick starts. We'll see what Charlotte does at 4, and we'll see what Philly does at 3 in terms of what Charlotte does at 4, because I don't expect Eshcom to last past the 4th pick. So if, Knipple goes off the board on at the 4th pick to Charlotte, assuming that, VJ Eshcom goes 3 to Philadelphia, then, the Jazz are picking between Ace Bailey and Trey Johnson and Jeremiah Fears and, Kamal Malawach. If Trey Johnson goes off the board at 4, then, the board goes to, Ace Bailey or Con Knipple or Jeremiah Fears. So, it's probably, reasonably narrowed down to 3 or 4 names at this point, and it's just a matter of, who's going to be available for the Jazz once they pick.
Tony, you're going to let you go on that, man. Really appreciate your time and inside on NBA Finals, NBA Draft. We'll talk to you again soon, man. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Tony Jones, love Tony. Just a wealth of knowledge on the game and great insight because he played for a long time into how some of these guys think, and you showcase that here with us just now. By the way, speaking of NBA Draft, ESPN 792.1 FM's NBA Draft Show featuring Spence Checketts, Gordy Chiesa, Richard Smitty Smith. I mean, how about that lineup there? Talking hoops for you on NBA Draft. That's live Wednesday and Thursday night. Jazz have 2 picks in both rounds, so we're going to do 2 nights of a live draft show for you starting at 6 on both nights. Show is brought to you by Angora Solutions, Budweiser, and Bud Light. You're not going to hear better insight than from guys like Gordy Chiesa and Richard Smitty Smith, who were in those war rooms for years, a few decades when it comes to Richard Smitty Smith. So excited for that show next week. One of these days, we got to get a guy like Tony Jones to sit on a panel too for a draft night. Maybe he can be the Shams and give us a little. Oh, Jazz are picking here. Little insights there.
That's the problem with a guy like Tony, though. He's in such high demand. Everybody wants that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I want to watch the finals with Tony, right?
Play pickup hoops with Tony, watch the games, whatever else. Start your engines. ESPN 792.1 FM is excited to announce the first ever Monster Jam World Finals, first ever one coming to Utah. That's July 4th and 5th, 4th of July weekend. We'll be giving away tickets next week here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Tickets are also available at Ticketmaster. And Bryan, don't you do what Porter did yesterday and ask me who my favorite Monster Jam driver is. I know the copy. That's it, okay?
Gravedigger.
I knew you were into this stuff.
Come on.
And you're going to ask me.
Come on.
Yeah, totally not my world. But Porter mentioned Gravedigger is one of his favorites too. Who's the one? He also, I'm blanking now. He said there's one that did tricks for a long time.
All of them do tricks.
There's one that did less of the smashing into things. Anyway,
some of them. There's one that does backflips,
great.
And I can't remember. I want to say it's like awesome white with red and blue trim.
Yeah,
there's a YouTube rabbit hole to go down with Monster Jam that is incredible.
Yeah. So they're coming to Utah for the first time. If you're a lot more into Monster Jam than I clearly am, get your tickets at Ticketmaster right now, or if you want to hold out and get some free tickets, we'll be giving away on the show next week. It'll be me and Bryan giving away those tickets, so Bryan can give you more of his knowledge there.
Do we need to have like a tank update, but with Monster Jam next week?
Monster Jam tank race update. Yes.
James is back.
Let's go. Speaking of NBA, I thought we'd do a little, because every year I tried to do this with Porter, but we kept running out of time. So we're gonna try it again here with you, Bryan. Every year when a new team wins the NBA Finals, we do the same thing. We do the same thing, and Porter brought up yesterday. It's about every sport, but particularly in the NBA. Could this be the beginning of a dynasty? And it's like all the guys on that team are like over 35 years old. Probably not. But we do it anyway, so yeah. I thought we'd play on that a little bit. We'd do a little buy or sell NBA potential dynasties based on the past few winners of NBA title. And, if you think it might be another team that hasn't won yet or isn't on this list that I give you, Feel free to do that. Text us your thoughts on that, too. 877-353-0700. Buy or sell NBA potential dynasties. Next on the Sean O'Connell Show with me, James Peterson, Bryan Brown, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Buy or sell NBA potential dynasties. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC. You'll get to hear from OC an hour from now, well, about 45 minutes from now. We'll air some grievances, talk PFL with him, NBA Finals, and more. But I got to bring this to the air because we were just talking off air. Brian, how did we not ask Tony Jones about how he's feeling about seeing Tony Bradley on the floor in NBA Finals games?
You know how
It just didn't even think about it.
June is Men's Mental Health Month, and you and
Yeah.
I both big believers in taking care of your mentals. Take care of your chicken.
Absolutely. Go see someone if you're listening and you're not feeling so hot. Go see someone. Talk about what's going on.
Yeah,
and
you
get
need
your
some
mentals in order. Yep.
You need something to check in
Absolutely.
on your friends with. Ask them how they feel about Tony Bradley.
Hey, you probably saw on Twitter when the playoffs started and Tony Bradley was getting some minutes because of some injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Tony tried to ask our guy Eric Walden. Shout out to Eric Walden. We miss you, buddy, in the sports media scene.
Happy for you that you've escaped the jungle.
Yes, we're happy for you, but we also miss you in this scene. So it's a weird dichotomy there.
One of the best guys that took so much heat sometimes on social media for no reason.
It's true. So it's probably a good thing in that regard that he's been able to take a break from that. But they had the now famous bet, famous in Jazz circles. Tony Jones saw Tony Bradley at Jazz practice one of the first times, and he said that guy's gonna be a 10-year pro. And Eric Walden said bet. And then the bet was if there's any year that he did not play one game, we're done. It had to be 10 consecutive years. Well, that last year was that year. They already paid off. He already paid off the bet, but now he's back and playing in NBA Finals. So Tony tried to go, hey, well, can I get my money back for the steak dinner? And Walden said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So there you go. Consolation prize, I guess, for Tony Jones that Tony Bradley's back in the league and doing pretty well. I wouldn't say thriving, but doing pretty well in his role.
He had a rough little segment there against Isaiah Hartenstein where
He's
got
still,
fouled and then got flopped on.
He's still very much a fringe NBA player, even though he's getting minutes in the NBA Finals. Well, speaking of NBA Finals, I teased this. NBA buy or sell NBA potential dynasties, and this is kind of tongue in cheek because I hate the thing that we do. National media especially does. Oh, the Thunder. We'll say Thunder won the championship. Is this a dynasty? Pacers won the could this be a dynasty? Not every championship team is a dynasty. Newsflash. But we'll do it anyway. There's been 6 different NBA champions. Or is this the 7th straight year that there's a different NBA champion? So let's start with this year's team. Thunder or Pacers, Bryan Brown. Whoever wins on Sunday, do you see that team being a dynasty?
If it's the Thunder, yes. If it's the Pacers, no.
My thoughts exactly. Yeah.
And I know that's groundbreaking insight, and thank you. That's why you come to ESPN 700 is for this kind of update. But I think the Thunder just have a war chest of assets to where and I go back and forth on Lou Dort because I like hoop heads, like the Twitter sphere, the NBA internet. We'll just cover it all.
Yeah.
They love Lou Dort. And so you hear a lot about Lou Dort. And I kind of get sick of hearing about things really quickly. And so I've kind of gotten sick of Lou Dort. And every time I want to go to Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever and fire off my $1 million thoughts, I want to tweet about something Lou Dort's done that's like bad. He comes up and makes some ridiculous play. And I'm just like, well, I
There
guess.
was in the Nuggets series, I think Game 5 or whatever, he had like 12 straight points when no one else could hit a shot, and that's not a guy who's necessarily known for hitting a 3-point shot. And like he has those moments out of nowhere.
Yeah, and he makes extravagant plays,
and he's
defensively
always
too.
good on defense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the question for me with that one really becomes, at what point is his value to the Thunder more than it is on the open market, and can they afford to pay him because he is so valuable to that franchise? Or do you have enough? Because at one point in time, I think there was a debate that Cason Wallace could be the guy and you could let Lou Dort walk.
Especially if you're able to hold on to Alex Caruso,
right?
Who's not old himself, and because you have 2 of those 3 guys on your team, Shea's great defensively. J-Dub, Jalen Williams is really good defensively. You're probably okay if you have to let Lou Dort go.
Yeah, And so I think the question is do you have enough in your war chest, and can you play this shuffle to where you're getting those key players from year to year? You know, can you find a Tony Bradley? You know, and I'm not saying that Tony Bradley's the tipping point for the Pacers, like he's out there, but can you find that key player? You know, Isaiah Hartenstein, for example, every year that's going to help you be the better team, so that you can continue that dynastic run. Because I think
that's why dynasties are so hard to do, because you need that.
And I think that was something that the Warriors really lucked into during their dynasty is, they were able to find a guy that was pretty good, Kevin Durant.
But they also were able to backfill with guys, with veterans or young players that you didn't expect a whole lot from. So it's a good point by you. I have the same thoughts. Pacers, I don't see being a dynasty. I absolutely could see them winning Game 7, but I don't know if they win another championship in a long time after that. Thunder, I can see them rattle off 2-3 in a row potentially, or 3 in 4 years, 3 in 5 years, because not only do they have treasure trove of assets, but I think Alex Caruso is their oldest player. He's not even 30.
Yeah,
like
so
they are so young. Chet Holmgren has not even touched his potential yet.
Yep.
He's like not even part of the offense right now, and yet he's one of the best players in this series. He has MVP potential. He's not even close to it yet. So, and he's probably going to get close to that, if not fulfill that at some point. So Thunder, I absolutely see as a real potential dynasty. Pacers, not so much. If the Pacers end up winning tomorrow. Celtics, and I'll start with this one. If you asked me after last season, I would have said yes, because they had all the things. They're older than this Thunder team, but they had the depth that this Thunder team has, that we talked about with Tony. It seems to be the new thing that you really need to win championships in the league is just a lot of depth. And they have the front end talent that's really young to do that. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. But the second Abram's gonna get these guys. Like, they may not be able to keep 2-3 of their top 8-9 players this offseason. When you talk about Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, also Porzingis may not play enough in the playoffs to help them go over the top against a team like the Thunder. So at the end of the championship season last year, I would have said yes. Now I'm not so sure.
I'm with you on that one, and I think the injury really changed the scape in terms of.
Well, they're certainly not winning next year without not playing with Tatum. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think had he stayed healthy, they had a chance to win the title this year. And so if you get another title, at that point, like, new ownership has no choice but to run it back.
Yeah.
Now that massive tax bill looming is just like,
it's not. This isn't hockey where the injured guy gets taken off your salary, not count against the cap, like the way the Florida Panthers benefited that with Matthew Tkachuk.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and that's, I think with this, like, we're seeing more and more of these Achilles tears, and it's frightening. I mean, it's good that guys are able to come back from it, but with that starting to happen, you wonder if, and we're 10 years away from the next collective bargaining agreement, so it's not like anything's going to change anytime soon for them. But I have my doubts about the Celtics and what they look like going forward. You're either going to have Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, so you're going to be in good shape, but not to the point to where they're a guaranteed dynasty.
So the other champion in the last 3 years is Denver Nuggets. I think it's pretty clear that they're not going to be a dynasty. I almost laughed out loud when people started to ask about that team being a dynasty, and it's not because it's not ridiculous to think that when you have the best player in the world, you can win a few in a row. That's not the reason why it's laughable. They had a hard time finding an eighth man in that championship team, with that championship team. It's what makes that championship so remarkable. They played like 5, 6, I guess 7 guys, and that was it. And now they lost a couple of those guys. They lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They lost Bruce Brown, who was great. They lost Jeff Green, and we've seen that they have the young guys that they've tried to replace those vets with are just not it, for at least under Michael Malone.
Yeah,
which is probably part of the reason why he was canned.
And it was without a doubt. I think the strife between front office and head coach, and Peyton Watson, I think, is a good player, but I don't know that he's played enough, and you could see that in moments during the playoffs where
The only one of the guys that he came off the bench in that championship team, the only one of the guys that has stood up to, hey, yeah, that guy we can bank on is Christian Brown. But you're 5 deep with Christian Brown. You need bench production to win championships.
I also don't know
Be a dynasty for sure.
how good you can be when Michael Porter Jr. is your 3rd or 4th highest paid player.
That contract has not aged well. Even though he's been a good contributor, it is not aged very well.
The highs are there. Like when you see it in action and you see how good he can be, but it's the lack of consistency and I think the injury this year really limited him stepping up in the playoffs, but it just, I'm a sell on that one too. Do you have another team?
I don't think there's another team that we can think of. If the Pacers win the championship, if they win Game 7, then the Thunder would be that other team.
Can I throw one out there?
Yeah.
The Spurs.
Okay. I don't know that I can get with the Spurs because they have yet to make the playoffs at all. Like I suppose I would I'd be more willing to look at the T-Wolves as a potential, for example, because they've been to the Western Conference Finals the last couple of years at the very least. Now, I don't believe they're going to be a dynasty. But at some point, I'm with you, like, especially if they're able to keep De'Aaron Fox paired with Wemby, and this blood clot stuff isn't going to be a recurring, and other injuries aren't going to be a recurring thing, knock on wood, for Wemby. It feels like it's a dynasty waiting to happen. I don't know that it happens next year or the year after. That's where I am with the Spurs. And the other option is maybe there are no dynasties in the current CBA. Maybe the second apron has killed dynasties, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing.
My argument would be is that's a good thing.
Yeah. Live Night Events presents the 2025 Granary Live Concert Series, powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Also proud studio sponsor for us here at ESPN 792.1 FM. Experience outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake's Granary District. Find more details on ESPN700sports.com. We got a PGA Tour leaderboard update coming up on the other side. It's the Travelers Championship. Was Tony Finau, after a rough first round, able to get closer to and eventually making the cut here? Is he going to play the weekend? We'll find out next. On the Sean O'Connell Show, I'm James Peterson. That's Bryan Brown, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Coming up on hour 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show, James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC today. We're going to talk with OC about a half hour from now. He's live in Wichita, about to call some PFL fights. We'll talk to him about that, air some grievances. Get your grievances ready, 877-353-0700. That's the same number to call us as it is to text. We'll read your text. We'll take your phone calls. Unburden yourself on a Friday, like OC likes to say. But it's time for our PGA Tour leaderboard update. They're at the Travelers Championship. This is brought to you by Uinta Golf. Dominate the tee with the Titleist GT medals and experience faster speeds with longer, straighter drives now at Uinta Golf. Olivia Benyon, behind the glass, has our leaderboard update. Take it away, Obi.
Awesome. Justin Thomas is is tied for first with Scotty Scheffler, and they are at 9 under. Justin is finished for the day, and Scotty is at through 17. And then Denny McCarthy is at 7 under, and he's finished for the day. And then Nick Taylor, these are all in third place. Nick Taylor is at 7 under as well, and he's through 15. And Austin Eckroat is at 7 under through 10. And then Tony Finau is sitting at 67th at 6 over through 12.
Ooh.
This has been your PGA Tour leaderboard update brought to you by Uinta Golf.
Thank you, Olivia. Great job again by you. That's our wonderful producer, Olivia Benyon. Yeah, Tony is not going to make the cut. That's unfortunate for us around here. We love Tony Finau and the local guy. And listen, I said this at home, watching him as he was in contention, Bryan, for the PGA Championship. I said, for me and my fandom, it might be Jazz NBA Championship as the thing I want most, and number 2, Tony Finau winning a major at this point. And anyway, he's not doing it at 6 under, not making 6 over, and not making the cut. That won't make the cut in a major championship either.
Not today.
Yeah. But we're all pulling for Tony. It's not going to happen at the Travelers this weekend. We'll see if he can get back into contention before the British Open coming up now, just a couple weeks away from the next major. So that's your PGA Tour leaderboard update from the Travelers Championship. On the other side, about 3 minutes from now, we are going to talk. I want to get. We'll circle back to what we talked about with our most trusted, least trusted. There's a bit of an update. Jordan Reed from ESPN, draft analyst, had some things to say, some really good things to say about Utah's offensive tackles, Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, that Bryan Brown was able to find for us. So we'll talk about that. And also, Bryan, you haven't had a chance to weigh in on any of OC's start bench cuts yet. So I want to go through some of those with you and get your takes on who you would start, bench, and cut so far from the Utah football greats from either Pac-12 era or before. Here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 792.1 FM. This is the Sean O'Connell Show. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
here for his second cap. Berhalter with a good ball. Chris Richards.
That from Team USA's win over Saudi Arabia, the only goal from that Gold Cup game last night. Chris Richards, you heard it there, game-winning goal for the U.S. men's national team, Gold Cup group stage, helped them clinch a berth into the knockout stage in the Gold Cup. So huge goal, huge win for U.S. men's national team. That's courtesy of Fox Sports. I may have a grievance in about 20 minutes here about Saudi Arabia being part of CONCACAF, but we'll save that for a little bit. Like, what is that, Bryan? Let's get to what you found. You're scrolling through Twitter throughout the show, doing what you need to do to see any breaking news. Doing a great job of multitasking, Bryan. And you found a nice note from one Jordan Reed, ESPN NFL draft analyst, that should be something that should get a lot of Utah fans excited.
Absolutely, and shout out to Josh Furlong, who wrote an article, posted, he retweeted, quote tweeted a tweet from Matt Miller, so we're in the tweetception zone here.
Tweetception.
But Furlong said Utah offensive tackle Spencer Fano and Caleb Bloom getting some additional love here, but so is safety Teo Johnson, to which Jordan Reed, quote tweeted, want to see him continue to add to his frame, but Utah OT Spencer Fano was the most consistent tackle that I watched on tape of the 2026 group, which I think that coincides with the PFF grades that we've seen all offseason. He follows that up with, Lomu has lots of potential. Skill set is very similar to Colts OT Braden Smith as a prospect. So, Jordan Reed, you and me, handshake emoji.
Yes.
Most trusted group.
Also Matt Miller, Josh
Matt Miller.
Furlong. We've got like 5-person handshake emoji here. Yeah, getting weird with the tweetception going on, or exception, if you will.
It's always Twitter to me.
And it's the same.
If Elon wants to sit here and convince me otherwise,
to something not saying to what are we doing? That's amazing. No, seriously, really encouraging to hear a guy who does it for a living, analyzes draft prospects for a living. Couple of guys really saying those kind of things. I mean, Braden Smith is a heck of a tackle to be compared to if you're Caleb Lomu.
That's exactly the kind of comp and the kind of correlation that you want if you're Caleb, because really his biggest strengths as a tackle are his athleticism, his aggression. He does have a lot of power for his size, and by that I mean he's underweight. He's not even 300 pounds. He's getting there, but he's just not built like, those. He's not an Orlando Pace type tackle where you're 6'8", 350 plus and just sitting there, stopping everything. He's a mover. He's great with his feet. He's good at getting his hands on people. He's really good in the run game, but he's not, as Mike Mayock would say, not a lot of sand in the pants. He's a little lighter, which, listen, you want to talk about golfers. He's a heck of a golfer, too.
Okay.
So if you want to play both worlds, if you want to play both worlds, you're okay being 285, 290 and being able to go, shoot 2, 3, 4 under par.
Can you imagine?
No.
PGA Tour, because you don't see guys like that on the PGA Tour. I mean, John Daly, who's way smaller, stood out because he was a bigger guy, but not that big. Like, that would be awesome to see Caleb Lomu. The NFL thing didn't work out. I'm gonna try to be a professional golfer instead. And with that frame, I would watch every week just to see someone. It would look like a freak of nature playing golf.
It would, and he does stand out on the golf course as he does everywhere because he is a legitimate 6'5", long arms, all that kind of stuff. But I think the ultimate dream for him would be starting left tackle in the NFL,
Absolutely.
pro-ams all through the offseason.
And listen, even great golfers are not good enough to be on the PGA Tour. So I'm not saying that we know he'd be good enough anyway. It's a fun thought to see it's out there playing golf.
Really what it is it's a testament to his athleticism.
Yeah.
Like, people hit that, and outside of Barstool Beef, like, people his size are not supposed to be great golfers. It's just there's so much weight to get around, and as someone who is not a great golfer and certainly has tried to be as a large human, like there is a lot fighting against you. You know, you say what you want about John Daly, like the man is something different. But anyways, the thing for me is just it's the dexterity, the flexibility, the twitch that he has, the ability to get the hips around, all that kind of stuff. There's such a good correlation with what you do on the offensive line. And to do all that and still have strength, aggression, you know, be heavy when you need to be heavy. And by that, I mean be able to stand up against a bull rush. This is why people should turn onto the YouTube, because I'm over here putting my hands up, you know.
You're doing
dropping my post leg, you know, like I'm fighting the bull rush right now.
Stand up and show it to us.
Yeah. That's. Do we have an intern that wants to be a tackling dummy? Like we can do just demonstrations in here.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
No, anyway, encouraging thoughts there should get you excited if you're a Utah football fan about Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, and this offensive line. And again, it's another reason why they should be looked at as the most trusted part of this Utah football team. And if you want to say outside of the coaching staff because you trust the coaching staff more, that's fine too. But among the players, this is the group that feels like the surest thing.
Let me say this about the coaching staff too. Like it feels blasphemous to say that about someone like Kyle Whittingham.
I don't mean that as a slight at all. It's just to say how trustworthy this offensive line looks.
People in their 30s and their 40s struggle with change. Kyle Whittingham's in his late 60s, and he's had to change more in the last few years than probably any point in his career. Now, that being said, again, I was up at the Ute Shoot 7-on-7 tournament. I still got chills when he rolled in on the motorcycle. And it's just like, I mean, I've been around Kyle. Like, I grew up going to camps where he was coaching. You know, he still has, like, a little bit of intimidation factor on me, you know, but a lot of it is just because he is so cool. And so all the stuff that I talk about, it's very stuff in the margin-y, you know, in terms of, like, this is a man that knows who he is, knows what he's able to accomplish. His will, drive, and determination is off the charts. Like, I mean, he's just one of those people that just naturally attracts attention, and he looks even cooler when he does it on a motorcycle, right? And so the stuff about the coaching staff is not so much tongue-in-cheek about, like, I don't think they're capable. It's just that's just a lot to ask of anybody, you know. Like as I've watched my parents get older, for example, you know, and even as I've gotten older, like I can't rally like I used to, and you know, go out all night and then sleep for 2-3 hours and then pop up the next day and just and go. And it's not like I was out partying all the time, anyways. Like, you know, but I'm just saying, like, even my late nights where we were getting pizza at 3 a.m.
The recovery time is needed. You need a lot more recovery time.
My 8 hours of sleep is the most precious part of my day. like that is like I am diving into bed trying to get to that. So the point I'm trying to make is it's just asking a lot of them. Now, granted, I think a lot of the shift, you know, they've adapted to well, and it's clear. So I've said a lot of things for a long time about, like, you know, pushing guys so hard and the hard works factor, and you've got to get guys to stay healthy throughout the course of the year. I think that's starting to change a little bit. I've pushed about, you know, recruiting local players more, and they are going heavy after a few different local guys, especially in that 2027 class. I do think you're going to see some offers coming out for some of the guys in the 2026 class that you maybe hadn't seen before, maybe hadn't considered to be good enough. A lot of what I saw at the 7-on-7 tournament was confirming in the sense of, like, Utah high school football is a lot better than maybe people in or around the program initially thought, and that was proven because, you know, Davis beat Liberty High School out of Nevada, and Liberty's considered one of the preeminent programs in Nevada out of state, you know. So when you're seeing Utah kids,
shout out to the Darts.
Yeah. Man, they're going to be good. I don't want to diverge into high school football, but we can do that next week if we want to. But the level of football in state is really good, and it's only going to get better in 2027 and 28. And I mean, every year I say, like, I remember 2 years ago, I was like, man, this 2026 class, it's special. It's going to be hard to match it. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at 27, 28, 29. I'm just like, 26 looks like a puddle compared to the lake of talent that's coming in. So all that is to say that as they're starting to make these changes, I see, that the potential for the program to really grow through all this, because I think when you get at home kids, you have a better chance of keeping on. And like Parker mentioned that in our interview with him about the basketball team. Like you can sell the program to the local kids with the historical part of it. It was fun to see on social media when we posted the highlight. I forgot that he was Parker Van Dagger after that.
I know. Yeah.
And the GIF, the Pac-12 lady going, wow, at the end. I forgot that we'd gotten that GIF in the GIF sphere because of Parker. So there is that part of, I think Nate Orchard is a great example of this. If you stay somewhere, you put your roots down. We used to say at Cypress when I was a coach there that the grass is greenest where you water it. That's a really strong selling point for a lot of these recruits. Stay in Utah. Build your brand, build your reputation here, and it's going to pay dividends down the road for in essence, for decades to come. I think for Nate, it's, from a business perspective, it's been huge for he and his group over at Advanced Windows.
Yep. Shout out to Advanced Windows, proud sponsor of the station, friends of this station as well, and to the mayor of Sac Lake City, of course, Nate Orchard. Yeah, and going back to that slight tangent you just introduced with because I'm a tangent guy too. With Parker Van Dyke and the tweet I sent out, I was kind of thinking that I'd get a lot of negative stuff from Utah fans if we got from the responses we got saying because I said, where does this rank in recent years? And be like, well, I thought it was going to skew negative to be like, hey, nothing good has happened in the last 10 years, but I guess this was awesome too, But this is something that Utah fans are really proud of, which I was happy that we got the positivity that we got, because it's true. We're not playing for great regular season moments at the University of Utah. No college basketball program is. They're playing to get to the NCAA tournament and have those great moments in March Madness. But that was such a great singular moment. And I love that Parker's so proud of it as a guy who grew up went to East High, grew up the shadow of the University of Utah, a big University of Utah fan, and knows so much about the history. I love that he's proud, and he feels proud enough to say, even though it was not in the biggest stage in the sport, it still is a memorable moment in a program that has had so many memorable moments. So I love that that's what it brought it out in people as I tweeted that out to try to get some engagement there. Appreciate everyone for responding to that as well. 877-353-0700 if you want to get in on the conversation on the text line as well. Real quick in the next few minutes here, Bryan, OC's been doing start bench cuts. I want to go through some of the ones we've already done.
Speaking of legends.
Yes, I will review what my takes are in that, and then I'll give you a chance to give your take. So he started out with kickers. That's Matt Gay. Actually, I think he started with punters, but we'll start with the kickers. Matt Gay, Louis Sakota, Andy Phillips, start, bench, cut, go.
So I got to echo what you guys said yesterday. It's Matt Gay for me, start, Louis on the bench, and sincerest apologies to Andy.
I know.
You guys called him Automatic Andy. I want to call him Andy Automatica.
Andy Automatica.
Yeah, like the Grammatica brothers. Andy
love
Automatica.
That.
Yeah.
Yes, also academia.
Yeah.
A little bit of college football. Yeah, I like that. Andy Automatica.
Yeah, he's a gentleman and a scholar.
Absolutely.
Adds some allure.
And we know, listener of the station, so our apologies, Andy Phillips. We had to cut one of them, and this is a hard exercise to do. Unfortunately, you're the guy. If you want to call in and air your grievance about that, 877-353-0700. We'd love to talk to Andy Automatica on the show.
I do feel a little justified by the fact that Matt Gay is an NFL kicker currently, and so that speaks volumes to his
Super Bowl
talent.
champion, too.
Yeah. He's done all right for himself.
He absolutely
Not
has.
bad for a walk-on from UVU.
Guy who thought he wanted to play soccer professionally for a long time until what? Less than 10 years ago.
It's a lesson out there for everybody that football is for everyone.
Yeah.
Even soccer players. You're welcome here.
Even soccer players.
Give you a hug. It's like Gordy says, hug your point guards, hug your kickers, hug your punters. So, yeah, Matt Gay, Louis, Andy in that order. And punters.
And that was mine as well. You mentioned, I think Porter had Louis start, bench Matt Gay, but punters, mine went in this order. Start Tom Hackett. Shout out to Tom. We love Tom. Bench Mitch Wishnowski, Mitch Wish, and cut Louis Sakota.
So the argument for Louis would be if you start him, you get the duality of like kicker and the punter, right?
Well, that's why I got him on the bench, so he's a backup punter too.
Mitch, I think, had the bigger leg, and that's why he spent so much time in the NFL.
I mean, he kicked extra points for a few games for the Niners this year, man.
It's a bummer that he got cut, but I understand it because, he's got a back injury, and there's probably some concerns with it, and the 49ers needed to solidify that position going into this year. So I hope he gets healthy. I hope he is healthy. If this is the end for him, it's been a great career. I think he's done more than anybody ever expected. Congratulations. The reason that I would go Tom as my starter, and this is like picking children, which I don't have children, but I have.
It is kind of.
I have like favorite candies, so I mean I think that's kind of
like
similar.
picking candy for you.
Or favorite pizza toppings. I don't know. The reason that I would go Tom was his ability to pin opponents within the 5-yard line, and the way that he could pinpoint the ball. It was like hitting a lob wedge. And I don't know if you've ever golfed with Tom, but he's an incredible golfer for a lot of the similar reasons that he was an incredible punter. And so that would be my reason that I would start him.
He's also the only guy on this list that was a back-to-back Ray Guy winner.
And
so
Tom,
hard to bench, let alone cut that guy.
Tom got a raw deal too with the NFL stuff because I think it's interesting. So the new 49ers special teams coach was the special teams coach with the Jets, Utah native from Colville, Utah. His name is escaping me right now, but I guess that's why we have the internet, so you can look things like this up.
You keep talking. I'll look it up for you.
But he and Tom, he was a big believer in Tom's ability, but the Jets at the time.
Brant Boyer,
yeah. So Brant Boyer was a big believer in Tom's ability. That's part of the reason why he went to the Jets, why they brought him in. For whatever reason, there was some sort of roster issue where Tom got caught up in the fact that they couldn't carry 2 punters and 2 kickers because they had an injury.
Okay.
And so they couldn't carry him through camp. I think he would have won that job otherwise, and probably would have won out, and it could have had a 10-year career. And this is, I think Jake Murphy's another example of this, where sometimes you become a numbers guy.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. Like
it seems like, speaking of Andy Automatica, it seems like that's what his NFL story was too, just the numbers thing.
It's part of why, and this is stupid, but it's part of why I believe so heavily in like the UFL and the AAF and spring football and developmental leagues. It's why I think that if we're truly going to go to this pay-for-play model in college sports, and I'll let the experts out there correct me in terms of what I'm saying with regards to that, but if we're really going to go to all these lengths to make it, a money driving sport, and it's always generated revenue, right? But it's never been a profitable kind of thing. Then let's let these guys develop for a few years. Like Parker was talking about that earlier in his interview too. He said, if I had 6 or 7 years to develop like some of these guys, I probably would have been better. And he chose to serve an LDS mission for 2 years, and so maybe that's set him back a little bit in his developmental curve. But also, like, I think we're seeing it with the Pacers too. Guys develop at different
Will
levels.
Hardy has been a Utah Jazz head coach, has said this in multiple press conferences. He strives to be the kind of head coach that does not give up on players.
Look at what he's done with Colin Sexton. And I get it.
John Collins too.
Yeah.
Colin Sexton probably even more so, but John Collins was looked at as, when Quinn Snyder couldn't get much out of him when he
was a lost cause.
He was like, we're going to trade you for Rudy Gay, who hasn't played since, by the way, and a second-round pick. Yeah. And now he was a guy who was very desirable on the trade market this past season. Didn't end up getting a deal done, but
I think Utah's asking price was high.
Yeah,
and that was the bottom line. And they knew they could hold on to him.
That's a credit to Will Hardy and his coaching staff, and him being that mindset of like, I'm not going to give up on players. Some guys develop later.
And he has the luxury of doing that right now because the Jazz are not good.
They're not trying to win.
Yep.
So
And so your hope is that like that's the benefit of a guy like Cody Williams, who has not shown anything to this point. And I wasn't super high on him when the Jazz drafted him anyways. I watched a bit of him at Colorado, and so it wasn't anything.
he's more of a measurables guy than what he showed.
People talk more about his ceiling than what he's actually done, to your point, right? So there's not a lot of tangible evidence with him. But your hope is that the Jazz are open to developing him and doing the things that are necessary. All this is to talk about the fact that I think it's a fun game. Like kudos to OC for taking the Mary whatever kill game, and adapting it to football. Like very clever.
Yes.
Not surprisingly for Sean, but that's the interesting part about when you look at some of these names, and I think Mitch came into a better situation because of what Tom did, right? And so he was able to excel a little bit there. Like had Tom had another year or two to develop, you see it all the time. I can't remember. It's the Birmingham Stallions kicker just signed with somebody too. I'm getting older, and there's so much information out there. It's hard to always keep it straight. I'll remember Brant Boyer for the rest of the week now, though, so that's good.
By the way, Birmingham Stallions, stealing names much?
So
Birmingham, geez.
Different color scheme, but they also did not.
They didn't do full speed ahead.
They did not.
Oh, good. That is safe. That hashtag is safe.
I got so much heat for that hashtag, and it's just it was such a
It's still memorable.
It is. It was not and everybody knows the number one choice. So this is behind the curtain, a little inside baseball for everybody. We're sitting in the room and giddy up, horses up, all the obvious
the Kramer
ones.
gif, giddy up,
are up there on the board, and I'm like, what about full speed ahead? And everybody's like, okay. And so it's kind of in the middle of the pack, and I'm like, look, this is fine. And then as you start looking at Giddy Up and looking at the images associated, it's oh no.
Absolutely
we
not.
can absolutely, for
one.
one.
The Kramer gif is fine. The other stuff.
Yeah, it is. All I will say is that the world is a very interesting place when you start diving into nooks and crannies of the internet that you've never looked in before.
Yeah.
Be prepared for that, whatever that whatever that entails for you.
Careful with the rabbit holes you go down in.
And so really what it came down to is it was the only one that we knew we could kind of own the space. Yeah. And so all that being said, Birmingham Stallions have been around with USFL. I think that was part of the reason why the AAF, the Alliance, chose that. But there's a lot of nostalgia associated with that. I could talk for days about my times with the Stallions. It was the best 6 months of my life.
Absolutely. We won't get to we don't have time to do these last two start bench cuts. Your takes on this, but hey, it was good. We wandered through something awesome anyway.
You guys nailed it yesterday, though. That was I was listening and actually was watching on the YouTube stream.
At ESPN 700 Sports Utah.
Maybe next week I'll start wearing, what was the guy from 30 Rock that would wear the hats?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And we'll start wearing weird hats and people can pick up. I will give you a candy bar of your choice if you hit us up on Twitter with whatever hat I'm wearing next week.
Ooh. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Bryan Brown will be back Tuesday through Friday. You get he and I on the Sean O'Connell Show as OC is out again next week. Speaking of OC, we'll talk to him next in about 3 minutes. But before we do that, start your engines. ESPN 700 92.1 FM is excited to announce the first ever Monster Jam World Finals in Utah, July 4th and 5th. We'll be giving away tickets next week right here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bryan and I will be giving those away. He'll give you his favorite, outside of Gravedigger, of course, his favorite Monster Jam drivers. So give you all the knowledge there. Tickets are also available at Ticketmaster. OC is next. We'll air some grievances. 877-353-0700. Send them in on the text line. Give us a call. We'll make Olivia work here, answer some phone calls. If you call us in, she's shaking her head. Make her work even more now that she's shaking her head. Air your grievances, unburden yourself with the host of the show, Sean O'Connell. Next, I'm James Peterson. That's Bryan Brown filling in for OC on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Unburden yourself. This is the time. Every week on the Sean O'Connell Show, we air grievances. We go into the weekend feeling much lighter, and we have a better weekend because we aired our grievances. And this week, we get to do it with the host of this show, who is in Wichita, Kansas, calling PFL fights. OC, what's going on, man?
James, just getting ready. Rehearsal's about to start for the show tonight. ESPN and ESPN Plus, 3 weight classes, semifinal action. Going to be a lot of fun.
All right. By the way, I got to do the Scott Mitchell thing. OC, welcome to your show.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Bryan Brown with me, filling in for you today.
The Brown Bear?
The Brown Bear is here. Do you want tell us more about this especially this main card? Gazdi, help me with the pronunciation. Gazdi Rabadanov versus Kevin Lee.
Yeah, Rabadanov. Gadzhi Rabadanov.
Okay.
The 2024 PFL lightweight champion. He jumped back into the tournament this year. Wanted to go back to back. He trains at that Khabib Nurmagomedov camp, which has just produced so many absolute monsters in the sport of mixed martial arts in Dagestan, Russia, which I know is one of your favorite regions of the world, James.
Absolutely.
And yes, so he's looking to advance to a championship. He's got to get the win over a very experienced guy in Kevin Lee, who's making a return to 155 pounds. He's been fighting at 170.
Tough pronunciation on the American guy there, Kevin Lee.
Yes, Kevin Lee, also a tough one. No, really, really tough guy, former All-American collegiate wrestler, and he main evented a couple cards in the UFC. But now he's starting off his PFL journey, and when you get an opportunity to jump in kind of last minute, he got the call about a month ago. Usually, it's a good thing, right? It's something super exciting, and then you look at what he's up against with Gadzhi Rabadanov, and it's like, oh, that might not be the gift that he thought it was, because Gadzhi hasn't lost in like 8 years.
All right, there you go. Tune in starting at 3:30, right? The undercard start at 3:30. ESPN, ESPN Plus, live in Wichita, Kansas. Getting some good wheat shocker, Wichita Shockers gear, I'm sure, while you're out there.
Yeah, obviously, I'm going to just stock up on Shockers gear for sure.
Wanted to also give you the opportunity to, if you wanted to, introduce another start bench cut, or did you want to wait for when you're back?
No, we're going to wait till I'm back.
Okay.
To start bench cuts, because I've run into a situation on a couple of, because now we're out of the kicker and punter and that kind of realm. So now we're getting into ones where it's like, not only do you have to make the decision on start bench cut, but with a little bit more depth at these other position groups, I got to make tough decisions on who to even put on the pole, so to speak, because, like D tackle, for example, there's 4 or 5 guys that probably belong in each era. If we're doing pre-Pac-12, pre-Power 5 era, and then obviously the more modern era. And it's like, who do you cut? Well, not only who do you cut, but who do you leave off the list entirely? So
who do you double cut?
You've got enough prospects at some of these positions where you can start bench cut like multiple groups, right? Like group 1, group 2, group 3.
Yeah, like I've actually thought about that. Like so like D tackle, because there's 2 D tackles on the field together most of the time, right? So like, all right, who's start bench cut for your nose tackle, start bench cut for your 3 technique, like just to give us 2 starters, so to speak. But man, there's a lot of talent that's come through the program when you go back even 25 years for just since 2000, and even if you just go back like the whatever it is 12 years since I guess it's 15 now, going into the 14th or 15th season in Power 5 football, Power 4 football. So yeah, there's decisions to be made.
I just want to say thank you for joining us right now, because as someone who's done like live streaming before, I know how stressful a TV day can be. So like that, and we're getting a Dagestan, Russia shout out. As someone who lived in Ukraine, like my day has been made, OC. So thank you so much for that.
So it actually, unironically, is one of Bryan Brown's favorite regions of the world.
It is, and I've got a little storage bin at home with some stallion surprises that I'll have to leave in the studio when I come in next week for you.
I love that. That's amazing. Well, you're definitely going to want to tune in then right at the top of the main card, because there's a young lady named Ekaterina Shakalova, who is Ukrainian, who's got an opportunity to advance to a championship bout in the women's flyweight division. So you're definitely going to want to tune in for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking at the card right now. She's from Donetsk, which near and dear to my heart.
Okay, I was going to say, sounds like you're familiar with that place. That's awesome. What I want to ask you too, OC, what do you think of we're getting a Game 7 in the NBA Finals? Were you able to tune in to Game 6 last night?
Yeah, it was. We had wrapped up the weigh-in show, and they were probably halfway through the first quarter, and Indiana was already building it. You guys know a pretty impressive lead at that point.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, look at this. The Pacers are actually going to try and make this a thing, even with an injured Tyrese Halliburton. And then, well, we all know how it played out. So, yeah, I think this might go down as one of those you should have killed me when you had the chance moments for Oklahoma City. But I'm excited we get a Game 7.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to put you on the spot because Utah just got a commit. Brian Brown, is tight end commit? Wanted to get the full breakdown from OC.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Bear Fisher, the 3-star tight end that committed about 45 minutes ago. You got a breakdown for us on that one?
I don't have a breakdown on 3-star tight end commits. I will say this, though. Everyone now, Utah football, with the tight end position, is starting to develop a reputation that they've already had at corner, at running back, at defensive tackle, at defensive end, at safety, because that tight end position is where you've had some super high-level college players, which, of course, translates to big dollars now. And then, of course, you got like the Dalton Kincaids of the world that are making their case in the NFL as well. So it's pretty cool to see another position group that Utah starts to become synonymous with. So good for Freddie and good for the tight end room.
That was very good. That was very good filling on something you had no idea about. Great job, OC.
A terrific professional there. Yeah, so Bear Fisher, 6'5", 235 out of Queen Creek, Arizona. He's a 2026 commitment, rated 83 by the 24/7 website rating system.
So
but
fairly high 3-star then.
Yeah, and a good size tight end.
Great.
Probably going to be an inline guy. I haven't watched a ton of film on him, to be honest, but I think to OC's point about the tight end position at Utah, predictions of its demise may be overestimated, because they're going to use tight ends. They're going to use multiple offensive linemen. They're going to do some really creative things, and there's a lot of good talent in that room still, so something to be excited about.
Yeah, maybe next time you should estimate me, Utah tight end critics.
Properly. That's my grievance for today.
Yeah,
the downfall of the Utah tight end room is false.
So, speaking of grievances, OC, I know you got a couple here. You always do. Hit us with one of your grievances you want to air.
Well, look, I'm starting to get probably a little bit redundant on all my travel-related grievances, but I walked in.
You with the travel. Me with the traffic ones. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Specifically with crosswalks and traffic stops, traffic lights for James. But James, I'm not lying. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do a travel grievance this week. This one I have to do, though. I walked into the room, and thermostat variance, especially during the summer months, is all across the board, right? There are some people who like to keep it super low. There are some people who don't mind if it's too hot in the house. They'll keep it at like 78. I landed very late. I landed at like midnight, and it was probably 70s outside. I walked into the room. They had the thermostat. I guess it would have been the previous occupant of the room or maybe the service staff, the hotel maids. 63.
Ooh.
63. It was way too cold.
Frigid.
Frigid, right? And I was like, holy cow. So, that's an easy problem to fix. Minor grievance to air there. And after a travel day, what do you want to do? You want to take a quick shower, right? I turn on the water. I wait a minute, stick my hand in there, see if it's warmed up. Still hasn't warmed up.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. So I turn it up a little bit higher, a little hotter. All right, I'll give it another minute or two. Put my hand in there again, 2 minutes later. It's still freezing cold. No hot water in the whole hotel.
Oh, no.
So now I have a cold room and a cold shower. And I'm travel gross, right? You get that weird film on you after traveling.
Yeah.
So I jump in, I take a cold shower. I was like, whatever. First world problem. This is all one giant collective grievance, by the way. And then the PFL operations staff does a really, really good job of letting everyone know what's going on with the venue, with the hotel, with everything that affects people during fight week. Keep in mind, this is the fighter hotel that had no hot water for a day while people were trying to cut weight. And then today, hey, sorry, everyone, the elevators in the hotel are not working, so you're all going to have to walk down the stairs to get to the shuttles that are going to take you over to the event. No problem. Except I'm on the 14th floor, James.
Oh, no.
So if they don't get these things fixed, I'm going to be hoofing it all the way back up when we return late tonight. And if there's no hot water, ooh. So grievance against the hotel for just completely mismanaging the situation.
Valid grievance. That sounds terrible. As first world problems go,
I don't even know that that's like a first world problem because, like I said, I lived in Ukraine. It was near third world there, and elevators never worked. So, like, we may be like you're getting a lot of validity over here on my side of the microphone. OC.
All right, Brian, do you have a grievance for us?
My grievance is just heat in general. So, like, lack thereof on the OC side of things. Yesterday, I thought I was gonna melt for just walking from the door to my car. Just too early in the year for this kind of heat.
Did you just air a grievance with the sun?
He did.
I know. It's a real surprise for a ginger like myself to be angry at the sun, but here I am.
Well, the good news is that gingers now have souls, right? So it's been decided, right?
There's a lot of news on the internet about what gingers are these days that I'm not real comfortable talking about on air.
I probably shouldn't have brought that up. There we go. My grievance is with, and this on a Jersey Friday, it's very appropriate. Did you guys all see the Oilers air quotes fan who changed his jersey to a Panthers one in the middle of Game 5? They aren't even facing elimination yet.
That's got to be one of those plants. You know how every once in a while at a Jazz game there'll be someone that the Jazz bear goes and sprays like silly string and dumps root beer on. It's got to be one of those, right?
It seemed fake to me, but I'm like, how do you catch that on national? How do you sit that close and be doing that? I don't know. Grievance with someone who's very passionate about jerseys.
Yeah, the grievance is valid either way because it's either completely unforgivable if it was authentic, or it's just stupid to do when you're talking about a Stanley Cup final game if they staged it. So double grievance.
And that's my part of the second part is like that's way too much effort.
Yeah.
I'm just going to live with the shame if my team leaves. Like, that's so much easier. I have to go to a bathroom or somewhere and, like, change my jersey. No. Or even wearing two jerseys. It's too hot. It's too hot for two jerseys.
Well,
back to the heat grievance.
Back to the heat.
Olivia Benyon, our producer today, do you have a grievance there?
I can only just agree with everything Brian is saying. I absolutely have a grievance with the sun, for sure. It's the worst. It's too hot. It's too much. I get irrationally angry when it's too hot.
Yeah, that seems to be a shared family trait, by the way.
We all share a similar skin tone as well, so that may play into it.
Yeah.
Olivia's sister, my lovely wife, also starts to break down in a lot of ways when it gets too hot. So that doesn't surprise me at all that you're that way too. Got a grievance from the text line. You guys ready for this one? Grievance: how is it possible that Disney can have a nearly tremendous stockpile of classics for these live-action remakes that they turn out okay at best, and DreamWorks can do one, and I feel comfortable saying it's the best live-action remake ever made? Get your crap together, Disney. Okay.
Oh, that's in reference to the How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah,
that came out.
Yeah, I have heard good things about that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I can't make any kind of judgment. But I can say that I am firmly against the Disney live-action remakes. So I will echo at least that part of the grievance.
It feels unnecessary.
I don't have children, so I don't see a lot of these movies in theater.
You're not the one to comment on this.
Yeah, so like that's my grievance. Maybe is like, let's make a space for adult men who are okay feeling feelings to go watch movies like Lilo and Stitch live action, so that I can cry watching that one, like I did when the cartoon came out.
Love it.
That might have been a little too much for this segment.
It's airing of grievances, not confessionals. All right, those are two different things.
I'm still learning.
Right.
I'm still learning.
Still learning. First time
first
filling
one.
in. It's his first one. He'll get another chance next week. OC, enjoy calling the fights there in Wichita. Enjoy Wichita, and I hope that they fix your water and AC and elevator situation.
So do I, or else I'm going to be complaining about it like a first world diva when I get back.
Absolutely.
Or we'll send you a Sherpa to just get you up and down those stairs.
Yeah, then he would air a grievance that I'm not exactly at fighting weight anymore. So,
I mean, you did say guys trying to cut weight. Maybe this is the hotel being like, if we put everyone on the 14th floor, it'll help them cut weight. I don't know.
Maybe they're playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks, OC. Have a good time there in Wichita.
All right, thanks for holding it down, guys. Tune in tonight. Later.
All right, that's Sean O'Connell, host of the show, joining us from PFL semifinals, Wichita, Kansas. Again, 3:30 is when the undercard starts. The main card, Gazdi Rabadanov versus Kevin Lee. That you can watch everything on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Didn't have a new start bench cut. He's going to save that for when he's back in studio, Bryan, which a little soft. I figured he thought about the show while he wasn't hosting. I don't know. But I guess it's fine.
He's got another show to think about, and it's a pretty big one.
That's a good point.
Yeah. This is one of those, I feel like I've experienced the world on, the fringes of things. So, I've the fringe experience of being on TV.
You understand a little bit of what's going on.
Yeah. He's got big things to worry about. And that, honestly, that card does look pretty awesome tonight. I might have to.
Definitely need to tune in, especially if you're a UFC guy. Tune in some PFL fights.
There's nothing else going on in sports world tonight either. So
right, Stanley Cup would be Game 7, but the Oilers couldn't pull through. So
thanks for nothing, Oilers.
There you go. Spence Checketts and Crosstalk is next, and we'll set the scene for the drive, which is next on on ESPN 792.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Crosstalk on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's getting crowded in here. Typically, it's 2 people crosstalk. The other day, it was 3 because we had a couple of co-hosts filling in for Spence. These same 2, Porter and Tony Parks. Porter Larson, Tony Parks, welcome.
I think this room's a little too small for the 4 of us, partners.
This is like
but good to see you. Good to see you.
Spider-Man gif, but like 4 of us.
Yeah. We were going down memory lane, Tony Parks and I, about Reggie Miller, because I'm wearing the Reggie Miller jersey. If you're tuned in to ESPN 700, at ESPN 700 Sports Utah on YouTube, you don't even need me to say that. But those that aren't, wearing the Reggie Miller jersey in honor of the Pacers forcing a Game 7, which I know we're all excited about, even though Porter's shaking his head. He wants a Game 7.
I wanted the Game 7.
Yeah.
Cheering for the Pacers is a line too far.
I know people say it's the 2 best words in sports. I actually think it's the 2 best words in sports media.
Yeah.
This is true.
Because I like game blouses personally. You know,
I know
that means I got to win as a fan.
I know players probably don't Game 7s are fun, but for a player, that has got to be the most like pressure-filled, anxiety-filled situation you could ever face.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's different. I've been in an NBA locker room before a Game 7, and it's real. Like you walk, I'll never forget walking in Game 7, Jazz and the Clippers. I go into the locker room. Rudy Gobert's changing his socks. Mm-hmm. He allows me to interview him. I always do quick 60 to 90 seconds. He knows I'm quick, so I get in there, and I'm telling you, he did not hear a word I said in the interview. Like, he was staring straight forward right. Joe Johnson, staring straight forward righty. Joe Ingles was the loosest. But everybody in that Game 7 thing, and the feeling on the court, so I sat right behind the baseline, everything about the competition, everything about the first 6 games compared to that 7th game, it was different. I'm telling you, Game 7's real.
That was round 1.
And that was round 1.
This is for the NBA championship.
The whole thing.
Right.
And I love it, man. I think it's so great that this series comes down to 1. We had a clear favorite. We had a clear dog. They weren't monumental underdogs.
Was that Denver you're referencing?
What?
The Game 7?
The Jazz?
Yeah.
No, Jazz Clippers.
Oh, that too.
2017.
Yeah.
Gordon Hayward's.
It was awesome.
That was the resurrection of Joe Johnson, wasn't it? The game where he went off?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's my favorite, too, because people were like, okay, what do you think their chances are to beat the Warriors? And I was like, I'll give them an 8% chance. To win the series? To win a game. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence. Yeah, I'm going to keep it real here, guys. It's over. That was awesome, and it's over.
Yeah. I wanted to, you guys seem to call each other. I know we expected the Bees hat from Tony Parks, voice of the Bees, but we also got Brian Brown with sporting the Abejas hat.
Brownie's my guy, man. Brownie's my guy. Way to deliver.
I didn't even know that Tony was coming in today. I could just feel the vibes that I was like, I need to wear this hat.
Come Sunday, Las Abejas. Celebrate everything that is here in the state. Wonderful connection with the Hispanic Latino community, and we have the Sunday brunch. That is the Porter Larson special, as we call it.
There we go.
It's a 12:05. We now have a 12:05 first pitch, which is perfect for the brunch thing.
Why do you get a feeling that your Sunday brunch is normally on a mountainside somewhere?
Well, that happens first, and then yes, obviously
11:05. The brunch starts.
You got to get down in time for the
expanded
baseball.
bar menu really is what delivers a 5-star rating from anybody I know who's ever done it. So get your tickets, slbs.com. By the way, the weather, 70 degrees and perfect.
I was going to say, this weekend it's like, whew,
yeah.
After
big cool down.
Yesterday, by the way, technically spring, June 19th, the solstice, I think it's tonight. It was 103 degrees in Salt Lake City. So that was fun.
That was rough. Porter, we're going to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
Give us a breakdown of Bear Fisher, the new 3-star tight end commit for the University of Utah.
Bear Fisher. Give me that guy's name, and you need nothing else.
I would have to believe Porter Larson personally recruited this athlete.
I don't need to see an ounce of film. If your name's Bear Fisher,
yes.
Guard, right? Yeah, sure. Play guard?
Could be. 6'5", 235 tight end. He may be at guard weight by the time the season starts.
That's fun. Yeah,
from the state of Arizona.
We gave OC the same treatment, by the way, in the Aaron grievances. Hey, breakdown.
What school though?
Queens Creek.
Queens Creek. Can't say I've seen him play, but I would recruit him based off of his name.
Yeah.
This is where like the recruiting side of things has changed so much. Is I'll watch the tape on somebody once they commit. It used to be I would watch anybody that Utah was going after, and it's just, I mean, you just never like. It's so much work to put in now for guys that may not last through the month.
Yep, it's.
But Bear
totally
Fisher
different era.
sounds like, I think Porter has sold me on the fact that like you got to hold on to this one.
Yeah, I mean,
Put this
even
one across the finish
even
line.
just for like
imagine the crossover
NIL
marketing
stuff,
deals,
right?
you could
Yeah,
do.
exactly. Get
State
some deals.
parks.
Get some deals with some folks like a
Bear Lake.
There you go.
Call us.
Not quite
Utah travel
40,000 pigs or whatever, but
tourism. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Might be a little better smelling.
Tell us what's coming up on the drive. It's Tony and Porter sitting in for Spence today.
Indeed.
What's going on in the drive today?
Well, we got an NBA Finals Game 7 on Sunday, so that'll be the bulk of the show today. But we'll tie in some local stuff there. We'll get the update on the Bees and talk some baseball. We will give you guys some updates as we get closer to the cut. Some PGA stuff. So we'll kind of cover all of our bases,
I love it.
figuratively and literally.
It's going to be a blast, man. Love hosting with Porter. Love seeing you guys here today. My guy, Brownie, they don't come better than this guy right here. Love his breakdown, love his analysis, but anybody who knows him as a person, you should absolutely love the fact that he is on your airwaves, has a chance to bring it. So I loved hearing you throughout the early afternoon today.
I'm going to make sure the bank keeps that payment going up. To
Yes,
Tony for that one.
please do.
It's been going on for years now, but no, we go back even beyond days at a different radio station. But I mean, anytime I see him on the sidelines, it makes me happy because it means football season's going on. And
Absolutely.
calls on the radio and all that stuff. So
it's good times, man.
Absolutely.
Roosters Brewing's coming in too.
Oh yeah.
So I may drink
Okay.
some beer on there.
All right. Roosters Brewing. Stay
That's a
tuned
perfect
for that.
Friday show.
That's going to be quite the segment.
Yeah.
When
I travel, by the way, last place I go, Salt Lake Airport, right before I got to get there early. Why? So I can hang out at Roosters.
Boom!
Watch the game. Great food. Money.
Look at you.
Absolutely.
Every time.
We're not even paying him to do that.
No,
He's
I just
getting
love
paid
that
for the
place.
on-air
Hey,
part.
he just loves the place.
I just love that place.
Speaking of hearing Brian Brown's voice on the airwaves, OC is out again next week, so we're going to do a best of show on Monday. Some of the best of recent guests from the Sean O'Connell show. The rest of the week, it'll be me and Brian Brown holding it down for OC. So that's coming up next week on the Sean O'Connell show. The Drive is next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Stay tuned for that.